Chapter 528. The third chapter. The three flowers formed by the thick fog returned to Mei Shuiyan's body with a whooshing sound after a while. Then, Mei Shuiyan gently opened her eyes and looked at June Moxie with a strange glint in her eyes. Her heart was surging up and down, and her expression was complicated. That's right. Mei Shuiyan could clearly feel that her elemental energy had indeed increased tremendously in this short period of time. She had gained 50 years of pure strength. In fact, it was even more than that. Mei Shuiyan had been besieged by the top 10 experts and had unfortunately sustained serious injuries. She had barely managed to escape back to the Tian Fa forest. However, her injuries could be said to be extremely serious. Her body had been riddled with palm wounds, sword wounds, and knife wounds. Moreover, she had been struck by an extremely sinister martial art. That sinister yin qi had remained entrenched in her body and couldn't be driven out. Mei Shuiyan had painstakingly healed herself for decades. She had even reverted to her Xin beast form to cultivate. But her injuries hadn't been completely healed. Mei Shuiyan had been soft-hearted at that time. She hadn't used her full strength in the beginning. She had always thought that these people were the main forces of the war for seizing the heavens. So, they could easily affect the safety of the entire continent. So, she couldn't afford to hurt them. Therefore, she had suffered a huge loss. Mei Shuiyan would have perished a long time ago if it weren't for her exceptional strength. That heavy injury had been a step away from a disaster for Mei Shuiyan. So, how could the besiegement of the top 10 great masters be a small matter? However, she had struggled countless times at the gates of hell during that battle. Mei Shuiyan had finally felt the edge of recovery on the eve of the Battle of Tian Fa. But she had been frightened during the most critical process. She had been on the verge of success when the sacred fruit had been stolen. Her mind had been agitated, and her strength had suffered a backlash. And she had been beaten back to her original form in an instant. Coincidentally, June Moxie barged in when she couldn't move. He thought it was just an ordinary animal and played a prank on it. Mei Shuiyan was so ashamed that she wanted to die, but she couldn't do anything about it. However, June Moxie unexpectedly used his Heaven and Earth Reiki to heal her, which had a great healing effect. Although it wasn't enough to make her recover completely, it had eliminated most of her old ailments. Even the backlash from her elemental energy was no longer a problem. After June Moxie left, Mei Shuiyan concentrated on cultivating and finally recovered about 80% of her strength. She successfully suppressed her old injuries and fought against the 4 Supreme Masters, in one fell swoop. However, Mei Shuiyan knew that her injuries were far from being completely healed. Moreover, the war for seizing the heavens was just around the corner, and she didn't have any confidence in her current condition. That was why she had suggested traveling the continent, hoping to find some opportunities to completely recover. And, following beside June Moxie was a premeditated arrangement of hers. That was because June Moxie's Heaven and Earth Reiki was the supreme method to heal her injuries. June Moxie had bullied her, but she needed June Moxie's Heaven and Earth Reiki to heal her injuries. This was a complicated and indescribable relationship. Mei Shuiyan had been tormented by these two emotions along the way, and had become exhausted. But June Moxie had been triumphant all the way. This had made Mei Shuiyan even more indignant. Therefore, she had plotted and teased him again and again. But this guy had taken all of her ploys. Even if he hadn't taken all of her ploys, this guy's skin was so thick that it was unparalleled in the world. His face hadn't even turned red once. What kind of person is he? Although Mei Shuiyan urgently needed June Moxie's Heaven and Earth Reiki to heal her injuries, she was still a Tian Fa Beast King. How could she lower her face to beg him? After weighing the pros and cons for a long time, she still couldn't make up her mind. So, when she entered Tianxiang City, she left with the Qian Sun Serpent Queen. When the two of them met again, June Moxie had used an extremely shameless method. Not only had he spanked her buttocks, he had even kissed her. This had caused Mei Shuiyan's heart to be thrown into a mess. She definitely couldn't kill him. She also couldn't hit him too hard. As for reprimanding him, It was useless against this thick-skinned guy. Mei Shuiyan had been at a loss. Coincidentally, she had heard Jun Moxie inviting her to stay at the Jun residence. She had been infatuated with him and had agreed in a muddle-headed manner. But after interacting with him for a long time, she didn't know why, but the shadow of this shameless youth had slowly entered her heart. The calm lake of her heart that had been calm for a long time had suddenly become chaotic, especially during this period of time. Although her injuries had yet to recover, the vitality linkage pill that Jun Moxie had given her had increased her speed by 3 times. And this heavenly vitality pill had replenished 50 years' worth of pure origin energy. Her injuries had actually shown signs of recovery under the effects of these 2 pills. In this way, once she recovered, not only would she be able to regain her peak strength, she would even have a high chance of advancing a step further. Even though it wouldn't be able to make up for the gaps in her strength, it wouldn't be too far off. Actually, to make up for the gaps in her strength, she didn't need anything else. She just needed to receive this youth's heaven and earth Reiki once a day, just like that time in the Tian Fa forest. She believed that it wouldn't take too long for her to improve greatly. But that seemed back then. It was really too. Even if Jun Moxie was willing, would she be willing? How many more miracles did this strange youth that people loved and hated at the same time have? The Snake King, Bear King, and Tiger King were still deep in meditation. Their strength was naturally far from Mei Shuiyan's. Now that they had suddenly gained 50 years' worth of strength, even with their supreme martial artist abilities, they would need to spend a lot of time to digest and absorb it. Jun Mo Xia finally realized that the great beauty Mei was fixedly looking at him. In fact, it seemed as if she was watching him attentively. Therefore, he couldn't help but feel good about it. So, he made a few poses and pretended that he didn't know what she was looking at. Just look at this young master's charm. After a long time, Mei Shuiyan was still staring at him. Jun Daxiao finally couldn't take it anymore and laughed bitterly. Why are you looking at me like that? Are you mesmerized? Do you think that I'm especially handsome? Especially sunny, especially handsome, and especially different from the rest? Although this young master is handsome and extraordinary, but if you look at me like that, I will still feel a little embarrassed. Mei Shuiyan finally collected her thoughts and smiled sweetly. Maybe it's because we haven't known each other for a long time. I really don't feel that way about what you said. But your especially thick skin makes me feel that you are very different from the rest. You actually feel embarrassed? Jun Moxie rubbed his nose and laughed dryly. Being thick-skinned is actually a kind of advantage. Haven't you noticed? The saint said it well. If you are thin-skinned, you can't eat. If you are thick-skinned, you can eat your fill. Whether it's eating, drinking, or finding a wife, only those who are thick-skinned can get there first. Those who are thin-skinned can at most only pick up the good words of others. Picking up other people's leftovers is meaningless. In any case, I don't like that kind of food. Is that so? So you're saying that being thick-skinned is the greatest advantage? Mei Shuiyan said with a mocking tone. Although it's not accurate, it's not far from it. Whether it's to get promoted, to get rich, to lead an army in a war, or to have the heart of an emperor or the talent of a hero, there's no one who doesn't have this essential factor to achieve the final victory. You have to know that there are 4 essential factors for a successful person. Not one of them can be missing. Jun Moxie boasted. 4 essential factors? Don't switch the topic with me. Be frank and tell me clearly. Mei Shuiyan's curiosity was really piqued. Since she had nothing better to do, listening to him boast was also a way to kill time. The first essential factor is to be two-faced. Jun Moxie said seriously. If you're not two-faced, the chances of success are slim. This point was especially important, as countless schemes and plots had originated from this point. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's the foundation of success. What's the second point? Mei Shuiyan thought about it carefully and felt that this point was reasonable. The second point is to be bold. You have to dare to think, and you have to dare to do it. For most things, if you dare to think, you're already halfway to success. What others don't dare to do, you have the guts. You have a higher chance of success compared to others. Jun Moxie looked like a great scholar. He shook his head and lectured tirelessly. The third point? Mei Shuyan thought for a while and smiled. Bold, needless to say. How many things can a timid person achieve? Even if he sells vegetables, he'll be bullied. The third point is the most important. Be ruthless. Everything was done with him as the center. Anyone who infringed on his interests would be killed without mercy. He would mercilessly destroy everything that stood in his way. I'd rather betray the world than let the world betray me. Only in this way can one become an emperor and even establish a foundation for eternity. Jun Mo Xie snorted. As he spoke till here, he couldn't help but think of Li Yuran. Ever since the rise of the Jun family, Li Yuran had been out of sight for a long time. There was almost no news about her. However, Jun Moxie had never let down his guard against the number one of the Li family's younger generation. Li Yuran was no longer a threat to him at his current level. In fact, the entire Li clan was nothing to him. But he still had a guard against the crafty plots and schemes in that brat's mind. He had a belly full of wild ambitions. If he wasn't careful, he'd be used by him. I'd rather betray the world than let the world betray me. What a domineering phrase. But it's true. What about the fourth point? Mei Shuyan gradually became serious. She seemed to feel that Jun Mo Xie wasn't just boasting, and that he was hinting at something. Is the fourth point even more obvious? Of course, it's being thick-skinned. Jun Moxie laughed loudly. Hee hee. How many of these 4 points do you think you have? Mei Shuyan tilted her head and asked, pretending to be serious. The second point is being bold, and the fourth point is being thick-skinned. I've obviously reached the peak of perfection in these 2 points. I believe that in today's world, there are only a handful of people who can beat me in these 2 points. Jun Moxie played along and said seriously, as for the first point, black-bellied, and the third point, I only have half of them. Being emotional has always been my biggest weakness. It's hard for me to give up on my family, friends, and other things. Jun Moxie sighed. As for the first point, black-bellied, and the third point, ruthless, I only have half of them. Being emotional has always been my biggest weakness. It's hard for me to give up on my family and friends. The revolution hasn't succeeded yet. Comrade, you still need to work hard. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. This is not the number of words charged. 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 Chapter 529. Mei Shuyan was surprised to see that he admitted that he couldn't reach the other side. She couldn't help but laugh and ask, "What about me? You? Don't trample on my 4 elements. You're a fool." Jun Mo Xie bluntly said, "You only have one of the 4 factors, and that is courage. Moreover, it's the kind of pure courage that you have. But it's pure courage. If you don't have the other 3 elements, then you're stupid and bold. If you only know how to rush forward, you're useless. You're not as good as those who are timid and know how to protect themselves. They don't have any of the 4 elements. That way, you can live the rest of your life in peace. You're now a target for others to frame you. You're burdening yourself, burdening others, burdening your friends, and even burdening your whole family." You. Mei Shuyan was infuriated. Nonsense. Nonsense? You're a smart person. Think about it yourself. Jun Moxie sneered. Let's talk about the time when the 10 great masters tried to stop you. It was the time when you were seriously injured. I didn't ask you about it, did I? But I can be sure. In the end, you were seriously injured and escaped, but the 10 great masters escaped unscathed. At most, they suffered some internal injuries when you were trying to break out of the encirclement. It wouldn't be life-threatening, and they wouldn't be disabled. As long as they recuperate, they'll be fine, right? Mei Shuyan looked at him angrily. Her snow-white teeth unconsciously bit her red lips. The look in her eyes slowly changed from anger to grief. Isn't this soft-heartedness? A woman's benevolence. Jun Moxie was merciless and continued to criticize coldly. And you must have been seriously injured, or even on the verge of death. You exhausted all your strength to break out of the encirclement and escape. Those 10 great masters who were spared by your magnanimity certainly wouldn't be grateful, nor would they repay your kindness. They would only chase you more fiercely. Therefore, you fought your way back to the Tian Fa forest while being merciful. Is the whole process like this? Mei Shuyan painfully turned her head away. Although Jun Moxie had never seen or heard of it, he was right. She still couldn't understand why. Everyone wanted to participate in the war for seizing the heavens, for the sake of the continent, for the sake of the common people. Why must they fight among themselves? Killing my own allies? Could it be that this was not their ultimate goal? But he clearly knew that they were fighting against foreign invaders and protecting the mainland as their highest responsibility. He was very clear about this, because those people also disregarded their own safety and disregarded their own lives when facing the enemy. Spill your hot blood on the top of the pillar of heaven's mountains and preserve your heroic soul between heaven and earth. Why? Could it be that even a Xian beast like him could understand this logic, but why couldn't they? Mei Shuyan didn't believe that they didn't understand, but she couldn't understand why. Killing him and executing Tian Fa Forest would only mean losing a capable ally in the war for seizing the heavens. In fact, they might even lose a great deal of their combat strength. Why must they do such a thing that harms others without benefiting themselves? Are you very confused? Jun Moxie looked at her coldly. Can't you understand, no matter how much you think about it? Everyone obviously has the same goal, and we have the same enemy. We should cooperate sincerely and fight against the common enemy. Why must we kill each other for no reason? Isn't this making our own people suffer and our enemies happy? That's right. Why? I really don't understand. This question has always puzzled me. For thousands of years, when was Tian Fa not the vanguard of the war for seizing the heavens? When had he ever cowered? In these thousands of years, how many Tian Fa Beast Kings have died on the top of the pillar of heaven's mountains? Thousands. I dare to boldly say that without the support of Tian Fa Forest, this continent would no longer exist. Mei Shuyan's eyes were spitting fire. But now, the 3 holy lands want to kill Tian Fa. Why is this? Why? You Tian Fa Beast Kings have a pure heart. This is something that is difficult for us to achieve. But this advantage of yours is also your biggest weakness. Don't deny it first. Let me ask you a question. Jun Moxie's eyes softened, but they were still sparkling. After countless war for seizing the heavens, there were 3 holy lands and 1 ominous land. But why not the 4 holy lands? Why the 3 holy lands? Have you ever thought about this? Tian Fa Forest also contributed a lot. In fact, they were the one who contributed the most. So, why can't they be included in the Holy Lands? Why do they have to be named after the ominous land? Mei Shuyan hesitated. She had never thought about this question. Since ancient times, the 3 holy lands and 1 ominous land had shaken the continent. Mei Shuyan had never felt that there was anything wrong with it. She had only felt that it was natural. No one dared to offend Tian Fa's ominous land. That was why no human expert had dared to invade the Xian Beast's holy land in the last thousands of years. But now that Jun Moxie had mentioned it, she suddenly remembered. That's right. Why? Why do the other 3 have the title of Holy Land, while the Tian Fa Forest is called a dangerous place? You, or perhaps all the Xian Beasts, have neglected a very important point, and that is the pride of human beings, or it can be said that it is a kind of inexplicable vanity. Simply put, the Tian Fa Forest and the 3 holy lands were destined to be enemies at that time. June Moxie laughed mockingly. This is a ridiculous mentality of thinking that it is orthodox. That's why there is today's dispute. Orthodox? What do you mean? Mei Shuyan slowly took 2 steps back and sat down on a chair. You still don't understand? The so-called orthodox means that humans are the masters of this continent. Humans are the leaders. All civilizations and inheritances come from humans. Xian beasts are powerful, but they should only be the vassals of humans. But in the war for seizing the heavens, it was your Tian Fa forest who contributed the most. No one could deny this point. In the first war for seizing the heavens, if not for the Tian Fa forest, the continent would have already fallen into the hands of the strange races. This has already become the pride of the Tian Fa forest. But June Moxie's eyes shone brightly. In the eyes of many people who participated in the war for seizing the heavens, or those who are about to participate in the war for seizing the heavens, this is a disgrace to the human race. Because it was because of a group of beasts that we were able to win the war and protect our homeland and lives. But as long as the Tian Fa forest exists, this part of history will never be erased. With the passage of time, it will also be passed down for thousands of years. Only when the Tian Fa forest no longer exists will this part of history be annihilated along with the wind, generation after generation, because they did not have the confidence to win the war for seizing the heavens, and because they were afraid of the strange races taking advantage of the Tian Fa forest. They continued to exist until now. But until now, one thing can be confirmed. That is, the 3 holy lands think that their wings are fully grown. In the future war for seizing the heavens, even without the Tian Fa forest, they will still be able to win without any worries. So, this is the time when the tragedy of the Tian Fa forest arrives. Humans treat their own kind in such a manner, let alone Yuxian beasts. Plus, coincidentally, the so-called dangerous land only has a fierce reputation, but not a fierce reality. This gives them the best reason. In this world where the fist is the biggest reason, don't feel wronged. The history books have always been written by the victors. June Moxie used a light and mocking tone to speak these words in one breath. Not wronged. Mei Shuyan shook her head absent-mindedly and muttered, My Tian Fa forest Saint Kings and Beast Kings have all spilled their blood on the pillar of heaven's mountains. They have always been proud of this. Who would have thought that today they have always been used as tools? Not wronged. Why are you humans so despicable? How can I not be wronged? You really don't need to be so wronged, because the 3 holy lands will also disappear along with Tian Fa. What are you wronged about? June Moxie sighed. The 3 holy lands will also disappear? How is that possible? Mei Shuyan was really puzzled. The reason is very simple. Even if the 3 holy lands can successfully get rid of the Tian Fa forest this time, they will have to pay a considerable price. When a war for seizing the heavens begins, the first result will be the 3 holy lands dying in battle. The strange races will take over the continent, and even if the 3 holy lands have a successor, they will not be able to continue living. The result will only be eternal annihilation. June Moxie chuckled and said, The second possibility is that the 3 holy lands are really strong. They even won the war for seizing the heavens, and their confidence will naturally soar. The Tian Fa forest was no longer a fearsome target against the outside world. So, it was only natural that they would start to fight amongst themselves, and they would strive for supremacy. In the end, there will only be one left. Do not doubt this, because this is the law of human development, and also the root of human weakness. It would be strange if they did not do this. Impossible. Working together to defend against foreign invaders is the teachings of the 3 holy lands. As long as the strange races are not completely annihilated, how can the 3 holy lands kill each other? Isn't this the same as forgetting their ancestors? Who can bear such a stain? If there is only one left, they will lose the motivation to compete, and a single tree will not be able to support a skyscraper. In the future, if the strange races successfully invade the continent in the war for seizing the heavens, Wouldn't they be condemned by history? Mei Shuyan shook her head violently. She did not believe Jun Moxie's words at all. From this auction, you can see that the three holy lands are still in the same boat. Is it still possible for them to work together? Chapter 530. Ancestral Teachings. These words from thousands of years ago may have been the golden rule at that time, but they have become stale dogma with the passage of time. Could it really curb people's greed and vanity? No. Those who follow the ancestral teachings are all mediocre people, except for a very small number of wise people. Wise people are wise and far-sighted, so they don't touch it. Mediocre people don't have the ability to change it, so they can only follow it. Only when ambitious people appear who are brilliant and talented will the ancestral behest be interpreted as a fart by them, even though they know that it's a golden rule. No one will give up the glory, splendor, wealth, and the country at their fingertips for a fart. Geniuses and smart people don't mean that they have wisdom. Jun Moxie said coldly. Mei Shuyan lowered her head weakly. She suddenly felt that the beliefs she had been holding on to since birth had collapsed at this moment. She held on with all her might and weakly refuted, "No, impossible. What you said is all your own conjecture. There is no evidence. You personally experienced the ambush and the pursuit. Are they also guesses? Are they not evidence? You personally saw the open and veiled struggle of the three holy lands during the auction. Are they also guesses? Are they also evidence? You clearly heard Ning Wuqing's last words. I believe you know the meaning behind them better than I do. Are they also guesses? Are they not enough evidence? Hermitage and the great golden city saw that the illusory blood sea couldn't get more pills and were humiliated by us, but they were indifferent and even rejoiced in our misfortune. You were there to see it, and you did it yourself. Are these also guesses? What other evidence do you need? When we were far away in the Tianfa forest, you were also angry because of what Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng said. Are those also guesses? Are the above evidence enough? Do you need more evidence? These 5 questions were like 5 heavy bombs, continuously exploding in Mei Shuyan's heart. Mei Shuyan's face suddenly turned pale, and her body swayed twice. Young Master Jun is right, big sister. You should really consider this carefully. Otherwise, no matter what happens to the humans, the Xian beasts of Tianfa will not be able to escape the calamity. Qian Sun's Serpent Queen's voice came from the side. She had finished her cultivation and had finally absorbed all the medicinal effects. Bear Mountain and Earthcracker stood on one side. Their faces were full of indignation. They had clearly heard Jun Moxie's words. Mei Shuyan's lips moved. She wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. She just sighed deeply. The 3 holy lands have as many experts as there are clouds in the sky. This is undoubtedly a fact. However, I believe that there are very few who can be compared to you. I'm even more convinced that even if 10 great master-level experts were to join forces to ambush you, you would still be seriously injured. But there shouldn't be many of them who can return unscathed, right? Jun Mo Xie said, with your strength, it's completely possible for you to kill a few, cripple a few more, and then escape with a body full of injuries. I even suspect that with your abilities, even if you don't consider the consequences and go all out, you'll still have a chance to escape unscathed. But you didn't. You only escaped with serious injuries. Those 10 people were intact. Jun Moxie sighed deeply. The reason why they still want to set up a trap to deal with you is because they have this life-saving talisman in their hands. It's because they know that you won't kill them that they are so unscrupulous. So, you're just indulging them. Besides that, there's no other benefit. But the war for seizing the heavens has always been entrusted to us by the Saint Kings. How can we ignore it? You humans can ignore the teachings of your ancestors, but we Xian beasts can't. Mei Shuyan took a deep breath and slowly knitted her brows. That's why I said that the pure hearts of Xian beasts are your greatest strength, but also your greatest weakness. There's one thing you need to be clear about. What I'm saying and doing now is only for you to protect your own life and the entire Tianfa forest. I'm not asking you to withdraw from the war for seizing the heavens. Jun Moxie looked deeply at her, Of course, you have to participate in the war for seizing the heavens. Even if you don't participate, I won't be willing. But in the face of threats and provocations, you can't blindly endure. If you need to kill, then kill. If you need to chop, then chop. Without them, the war for seizing the heavens may not be lost. But if you're willing to die, you'll only take advantage of their wishes and harm all the Shin beasts of Tian Fa. And the war for seizing the heavens may not be won. How can this be the conduct of a beast emperor of Tian Fa? You need to be clear about this. If you really make the wrong choice and lead to the destruction of the Shin beasts of Tian Fa, I think you won't have the face to see the Saint Kings in the afterlife. Mei Shuyan pondered for a while. Then, her eyes slowly lit up. She slowly said, "Yes, I understand. So, I've always endured humiliation in order to carry out an important mission. But it was a mistake. I made a big mistake. I hope you've truly understood this time." Jun Moxie smiled. "Now it's time to protect the two of them and take the vitality linkage pills." Mei Shuyan smiled and nodded. She was originally a wise and far-sighted person, but she was too obsessed with the war for seizing the heavens. So, she was somewhat indecisive in her actions. She didn't have her usual decisiveness and perseverance. Now that the knot in her heart had been untied, she naturally regained the demeanor of the decisive Tian Fa Great Master. 2 divine pills were taken by Bear Mountain and Earthcracker respectively. Then, they sat cross-legged and began to circulate their martial arts. Mei Shuyan, Jun Moxie, and Qian Sun didn't dare to be negligent. They were sitting calmly, but they could feel that each other's spirit sense had already spread out far and wide. Any change within a radius of several thousand feet wouldn't escape their senses. Jun Moxie went one step further. He emitted his own pure spirit energy and helped the 2 Beast Kings to succeed. Mei Shuyan and Qian Sun were gradually astonished. Jun Moxie's progress was undoubtedly astonishing, but he was only at the peak of Tian Xian's cultivation. So, how could his spirit sense be so powerful? Qian Sun even felt that she was inferior to Jun Moxie in this aspect. She couldn't help but feel strange. Could it be that he's hiding his strength? Mei Shuyan's strength was the strongest among the people present. So, her spirit sense was also the most sensitive. She had a clearer grasp of Jun Moxie's spirit sense. In fact, she had even sensed the direction in which Jun Moxie's spirit sense had spread out. And she hadn't missed anything. But what had surprised her the most was that Jun Moxie's spirit sense wasn't just powerful. Moreover, the places that Jun Moxie had probed were the weakest points in this area. In fact, many of them coincided with Mei Shuyan's. In fact, there were some places that even Mei Shuyan had overlooked. This matter sounded simple, but how much experience did one need to be in order to accomplish this? Mei Shuyan was well aware of this. She had gone through a long period of battles. She had faced all the dangers before her transformation. She had cultivated her current battle wisdom over many years. But this 17-year-old Jun Moxie was actually even more meticulous than her. Wasn't this extremely strange? While Mei Shuyan was in the midst of her astonishment, Jun Moxie suddenly asked in a seemingly unconscious manner, "Oh right, there's one thing that I still don't understand. How exactly did I offend you? You actually used so many crooked tricks to mess with me that day." Mei Shuyan was speechless. This question was no longer in the category of being easy to answer. She simply couldn't answer it. From the very first time we met in the Tian Fa forest, you seemed to have a lot of opinions about me. Jun Moxie maintained his spirit sense and aura, but he spoke with ease. Multitasking. This made Snake King and Mei Shuyan even more shocked, because when Jun Moxie spoke, his spirit sense didn't fluctuate at all. This kind of precise control was something that even Mei Shuyan could barely achieve. This guy's a freak. They only heard Jun Moxie continue. "When you saw me, your hatred seemed to overflow to the heavens. Even Li Ju Tian had suffered an undeserved calamity at that time. Then you caught me but didn't kill me. Instead, you ruthlessly spanked me. My butt was swollen for several days. I still don't understand what this means. Do you have this kind of hobby?" Recalling the situation at that time, Mei Shui-yin couldn't help but smile faintly. However, a trace of embarrassment flashed across her face. Obviously, she was thinking of the time when she was bullied by this brat in Tianfa Forest. After that, you played with me the whole way from the Southern Heaven City to the Tianxiang Empire. We met again in the Tianxiang Empire, but you still spanked my butt. You didn't kill me, and you didn't cripple me either. You just spanked my butt. This is too strange, isn't it? June Moxie was puzzled. What kind of dog fart hobby is this? Isn't it because you were born with the appearance of someone asking for a beating? Who else would I beat if not you? Mei Shui-yin coldly snorted. She didn't want to talk about this topic. Even if my appearance was repulsive, I could clearly feel that you were controlling your strength when you spanked me. You were afraid that you'd injure me. If you were in the Tianxiang Empire and knew about the importance of the divine pill, then it would have shown that you had some ulterior motive. But you were like this when we first met in the Southern Heaven City. This really puzzled me. June Moxie wrinkled his brows and concluded. So, I concluded that I must have offended you. But it wasn't a big matter. But you couldn't bear it. And you couldn't kill me. So I fainted. Our relationship wasn't that complicated at that time, right? Mei Shui-yin snorted but didn't speak. She allowed him to let his imagination run wild. Her lips were tightly shut, and she didn't say a word. I haven't asked you yet. Shui-yin, what is your original form? After the crisis passed, June Moxie began to call Mei Shui-yin by her nickname again. You don't need to know that. Mei Shui-yin glared at him. At the same time, she gave Qian Sun's Serpent Queen a warning look, indicating that she mustn't reveal anything. Qian Sun's Serpent Queen blinked her eyes, indicating that she understood. Are you kidding me? Mei Shui-yin looked at June Moxie. If I let you know about my original form, wouldn't you know how you offended me? If that's the case, it's too embarrassing. It's fine if it's just embarrassing, but how are we going to interact in the future? The sequelae of my leg injury have been acting up these few days. I've been having cramps and pain. It hurt the whole night last night. It hurts so much that I'm sweating profusely. It's extremely painful. Last year, right before winter, this happened and it lasted for half a month. I didn't expect it to still hurt this year. Damn it. I went to the hospital today and the doctor said that it's normal. It'll be fine after summer. A cold requires a drip for a few days. It's already good that my broken thigh bone can recover to this extent. You should be content. I really want to bang my head against the wall. I strongly requested to be injected with morphine to relieve the pain. The doctor rolled his eyes at me and said earnestly, "Young man, it's time for the motherland and the people to test you. You have to hold on. I'm going to faint." Chapter 531. Recalling the scene at that time, Mei Shui-yin couldn't help but feel hot all over. Her face was burning hot, and she felt angry in her heart. She felt as if there was a big hand rubbing her, but if you don't want to talk about it, then forget it. It's not a big deal. June Moxie sighed. He was bored to death. He tried to find something to talk about. All right, let me tell you something interesting. I saw a little thing in the Tianfa Forest last time. He closed his eyes and thought for a while. Then he gestured with his hands and said, "There's a little thing this long, a very small thing. Its whole body was white, and it had pointy ears. The tip of its nose was a little red, and its eyes were black like obsidian. On top of its head, there was a bunch of thin red hair. It was very cute, especially her, but it felt very nice when I rubbed it. I rubbed it for a long time. It was very comfortable. TSK, TSK. That little thing seemed to have suffered from internal injuries. I don't know what kind of cruel guy could do that to such a cute little thing. When you go back, help me take care of it. If you have the chance to see that little thing, catch it for me. I would rub her, but every day when I have nothing to do. It was quite fun. Xiao, he has little white. It looks like it, but it's not as cute. I used to put it in my pants at that time. Ha ha ha." When he said this, he clearly heard Qian Sun, Serpent Queen, suck in a breath of cold air. He couldn't help but look at her in puzzlement. Could it be that the little thing was actually hers? Qian Sun's Serpent Queen hurriedly lowered her head. She was shocked in her heart. My God, isn't he talking about Big Sister? I finally know why Big Sister hates June Moxie so much. and the reason why she wants to go against him no matter what. So that's why. My God, how could it be like this? I didn't expect Big Sister to be so wantonly played by him. It's really shocking. Mei Shuiyan was speechless. This brat finally said it, and he actually wanted me to help him catch it? The most infuriating thing was that this guy still hadn't forgotten what he had said. Little thing, follow me, and I'll rub your butt every day. It feels so good. Also, he stuffed it in his pants. The most important thing was that his words were overheard by that little girl, Qian Sun's Serpent Queen. At this moment, Mei Shuiyan almost wanted to strangle this blabbermouth to death on the spot. How infuriating! June Moxie saw her face blushing again and asked curiously, "What's wrong with you? Why is her face red again? Is it because you're not used to the sudden increase in power? With your cultivation, it shouldn't be." Behind him, the Snake King finally couldn't help but let out a gulp, as if he was about to burst out laughing. But he forcefully held it back. "Shut up." Mei Shuiyan roared fiercely, as if she was going to eat someone alive. June Moxie shrunk his neck and obediently shut up. "I can't afford to offend you, so I won't say anything, okay?" She didn't know that no matter what he should or shouldn't say, he had just said it all. Whatever he should or shouldn't have heard, he had heard it all. Mei Shuiyan was so angry that her stomach was about to explode. This damned enemy. With a strange cry, Big Bear abruptly jumped up. His bare eyes were wide open, and his face was filled with disbelief. He twisted his buttocks a few times at a speed that the naked eye couldn't capture. Then he suddenly burst into laughter. "Wonderful! What kind of medicine is this? It's too miraculous. Damn it! After eating this pill, my yuan power circulation speed has increased so much. I'm not dreaming, right? Huh? F*CK. It increased by more than 3 times in one go. Why, Old Bear can finally taste the feeling of being invincible in the world. Where's Old Crane? Come and fight with me. I will beat you black and blue. Later on, I will be Third Bear, no, I will be Second Bear, haha." In almost half a year, Bear Mountain first took a 10 years pill, which increased his strength once. Then, with the help of June Moxie, he successfully broke through the bottleneck. His strength had been stagnant for a long time, and now he took a heavenly restoration pill, which increased his pure magic power by 50 years. Then he took a vitality linkage pill, which increased his speed by more than 3 times. How could this Bear King's confidence not burst to the brim with confidence after the continuous explosive improvements? "Old Bear, you glutton, shut up." Snake King knew that Bear King's temper wasn't good, so he kindly shouted to stop Bear King. However, it seemed that it was too late. Mei Shuiyan turned her head, and her eyes seemed to be fixated on Bear Mountain's body. Facing such an irresistible pressure, Bear Mountain's body inexplicably shrank back. He suddenly remembered that his strength had increased greatly, so he wanted to confirm to what extent he had advanced. Even if he was still not as strong as Big Brother, he could still hold on for a while. He couldn't help but smile proudly and said, "Big Brother, I want to exchange pointers with you." Qian Sun's Serpent Queen covered her face. What a tragedy, what a complete tragedy. Humans, once they get carried away, extreme joy will turn to sorrow. It seemed that this not only applied to humans, but also to beasts. What is stupid? Isn't this it? Stupid, really too stupid. This stupid bear who got carried away was going to be ruthlessly abused today, and it was asking for it. Very good. I also wanted to spar with someone. Spar with them. It's rare that you volunteered. Today, I must exchange pointers with you. Mei Shuiyan clenched her teeth. She had a belly full of anger, but she had nowhere to vent it. And now, a sandbag had come out of nowhere. This was really fulfilling one's wish. A target had fallen from the sky. Moreover, it was a particularly tough target. Ling Ling swept a glance at him. Then, she walked out of the courtyard and shouted, "Come out. Didn't you want to exchange pointers?" The pitiful Bear Mountain had just woken up after absorbing the medicine's potency. So, he didn't know anything about what had happened outside. He thought that it was just an ordinary exchange pointers. So, he followed Mei Shuiyan in high spirits. He grinned complacently along the way and dreamt of a great increase in strength. In fact, the fourth Bear Mountain couldn't be blamed for this. He, the third crane, and Long Crane had broken through their bottlenecks with the help of June Moxie's spiritual energy. So, their strength had increased by leaps and bounds. It could be said that they had already reached the peak of the Great Master level. In fact, they were only one step away from the Great Master level. Moreover, his strength had increased by leaps and bounds with the help of the Heavenly Vitality Pill and the Vitality Linkage Pill. So, even the third crane, the Snake King, and the Tiger King wouldn't be his match. Therefore, it could be said that Bear Mountain's strength was the strongest among the Tian Fa Beast Kings apart from Mei Xuyan. In fact, no one could compare notes with him except Mei Xuyan. It was a fact that the fourth Bear Mountain's strength had increased by leaps and bounds. But there was no doubt that Mei Xuyan's strength was still far above his. Bear King was still afraid of his elder sister. But his strength had improved, but he hadn't been able to verify it. So, he had been distressed. So, he had made this proposal. It was normal to look for an opportunity to exchange pointers after a breakthrough. But Bear King wouldn't have dared to provoke Mei Xuyan at this time if he had heard even half a sentence of this conversation, even if he had the courage to do so. It was a pity that he hadn't heard it. One could defy the wrongs of the heavens, but one couldn't escape the wrongs brought upon oneself. Bear Mountain saw a slender silhouette coming over with a whizzing sound as soon as he came out. Bear King had just increased his elemental power, and his speed had also increased by 3 times. So his strength was far from what it had been in the past. Moreover, his energy was abundant at the moment. So he needed a place to vent it. Moreover, his self-confidence had also risen to an unprecedented height. So he hadn't panicked, even though he had seen his big brother rushing over a high speed. Instead, he had quickly responded. Bear Mountain's current strength was considered to be very strong. So, he wouldn't be a match for Venerable Mei if he were to encounter the 4 great masters in the Tian Fa forest. But he would still be able to deal with him for a while. But he wasn't the only one who had been taking pills these days. In fact, the others had also taken pills. Moreover, their progress was above his. There was already a huge gap between them. And now, the gap was even bigger. So, Old Bear was in for a tragedy. Bear King had thought that his speed had increased tremendously. Although this attack wasn't slow, he could still dodge it with his current speed. But he didn't expect to feel an abrupt pain on his back. It was obvious that he had been hit hard on his back. He staggered and stumbled a few steps. Just as he was about to turn around, he suddenly felt another pain on his buttocks. An irresistible force had attacked him. His body couldn't help but spin in a circle. Bang, bang, bang. It was as if he had been beaten by a piece of leather. His stomach had suffered a series of heavy blows. Bear Mountain was sent rolling like a rubber ball. When he landed on the ground, he was like a gold ingot that had been blown away by a strong gale. He flipped a few times in succession. Up until now, he still hadn't reacted. His mind was in a mess. Didn't they say that we were going to exchange pointers? Why did they start fighting right away? And they didn't even give me a chance to counterattack? This is a spar. No matter how I look at it, it looks like they're just venting their anger. My progress isn't small. But why do I feel that Big Brother's progress is even greater? Oh my God, I haven't even had the chance to take a stance yet. Did I bump into a big board again? He was just about to speak and beg for mercy. But he had just opened his mouth when he suddenly received a heavy kick on his chin. He did a graceful backflip and fell firmly on the ground. Then he prostrated himself on the ground. He raised his neck with great difficulty, like a big turtle basking in the sun on the beach. Just as he was about to speak, his 2 eye sockets were punched a few times in a row, and he instantly turned from a bear to a panda. His prone position was also instantly flipped over, and he was now lying on his back. Big Bear Beast King was dizzy. Only now did he realize that something was wrong. He shouted, "Big brother, spare me. I don't want to play anymore. I don't want to play with such a bear." You don't want to play anymore? Do you think this is still up to you? Don't you want to be Big Brother Bear? Who are you going to bear if not me? Mei Xuyan was merciless. She pounced on him like a gust of wind. She punched and kicked him. Every punch and every kick was mixed with a vast and irresistible force. Bear Mountain complained incessantly. He kept screaming, "What's going on? What's going on? When did I say that I want to be Big Brother Bear? At most, I want to be Second Brother Bear. How about I become Youngest Brother Bear? What's going on?" Qian Sun's Serpent Queen looked at him sympathetically. "I told you to shut up long ago, but you didn't listen. You just had to look for trouble yourself. Who can you blame now?" Chapter 532. The sound of heavy objects hitting each other could be heard incessantly. Bear King's screams were earth-shattering. He finally found an opportunity to crawl up. Then, he started to run away in a daze. "Mother asterisk her, you're beating me to death," and he heard a cold voice behind him, "World Cage." Bear Mountain's feet were in front and back. He had been running madly for his life. But he suddenly stopped there. His eyeballs turned wildly, and his face was full of remorse. Then, a storm of beatings started to fall on his body. June Moxie's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. The corners of his mouth twitched. "It turns out that Mei Shuiyan had only spanked my buttocks. That's a huge mercy. I've found such a wife. When will she be unhappy? Will I be her sparring partner? My God, I can't afford to provoke this woman if I don't have enough strength to deal with her. Otherwise, I'll get beaten up if I'm not careful." However, he was also amazed in his heart. Bear King is worthy of being called Bear King. His skin is thick and his flesh is really tough. He's really resistant to beatings. His ability to withstand beatings is really solid. Mei Shuiyan finally stopped after a series of firecracker-like beatings. She snorted and stood there in an elegant and noble posture. Then she smiled slightly. Then she gently lifted her skirt and slowly walked back into the room. Her posture was that of a natural aristocrat. She was like a fairy walking on the moon. Who could tell that this fairy-like person had just put on a show of abuse? Behind her, Big Bear wanted to cry, but had no tears. His face was purple, and one of his heads had been upgraded from a bear's head to a pig's head. He lay limply on the ground and twitched. Speechless, he asked the heavens, feeling extremely wronged. Who did I offend? I want to show off my strength. Is it a crime? Is it necessary to torture me like this? Mei Shuiyan clapped her hands. She walked into the room with a refreshed body and mind. Then she asked Earthcracker with a smile, "Ninth brother, how do you feel? Does it feel good to improve your strength? Do you also feel that you're invincible now? It's a little unfair to be the ninth." No, no, no. Earthcracker shook his head like a rattle drum. Then he bent down and smiled. "I'm just a small ant in front of Big Brother. Big Brother, you've been training for so long. Aren't you tired? Do you want me to massage your back? My skills have increased, and my hand strength has also increased. Boss will definitely be satisfied. There's no need. Earthcracker, you look stupid, but you're much smarter than Fourth Brother Bear." Mei Shuiyan took the cup of tea that Qian Sun had handed over. Then she took a sip and raised her eyelids. "You're flattering me. It's all because of Big Brother's guidance. It's all because of Big Brother's contribution." Earthcracker nodded and bowed. He beamed with joy. "What do you think about Fourth Brother Xiong? Do you think that I was too heavy-handed? After all, we're brothers." Mei Shuiyan glanced at him indifferently. Then he puffed out his chest and put on a serious face. His whole body exuded an awe-inspiring aura of righteousness. How could that be? This Fourth Brother Bear overestimates his own capabilities. He thinks that his skills have improved a little. So, he dares to offend Big Brother's divine prestige. This is intolerable. Even I want to beat him up when I see his face. I realized it too late. Otherwise, Big Brother wouldn't have needed to make a move. I would have done it. This Fourth Brother Bear has no respect for his superiors. He's lawless. So, Big Brother is very magnanimous in teaching him a lesson. I personally think that Big Brother shouldn't have been so lenient. People like Fourth Brother Bear must be mercilessly punished and resolutely attacked. You mustn't let him off lightly. I strongly suggest that Big Brother imprison Fourth Brother Bear when you return to the Tian Fa forest. Then he must pierce his mouth with a long bamboo pole and hang him upside down from the top of a 1,000-year-old tree as a warning to others." Qian Sun and June Moxie were thunderstruck. They looked at Earthcracker with a dumbstruck expression. Who said that this man is an idiot? Look at this flattery. It's so powerful, especially when Earthcracker had said lenient. This had left both of them shocked. After all, Bear Mountain's miserable condition was so bad that even a thief who had been caught and beaten up by the masses for 100 days would have felt that he was living in heaven if he had seen it. So this is called lenient? This Earthcracker must have a limit to his bullsh *T. Otherwise, why would his surname be Who? Mei Shuyan smiled and nodded. She was very gratified by Earthcracker's understanding of righteousness. So, she said in an amiable manner, "Well said. I didn't expect that you, ninth brother Who, would be so knowledgeable." "Not at all. This is all thanks to Big Brother's nurturing." Earthcracker stood at attention. Earthcracker stole a glance at Bear Mountain. Then, he opened his big mouth and started to laugh at his misfortune. He was overjoyed. However, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. "I finally passed this hurdle. Brother Bear, I'm sorry. You can't bully a tiger when you're a bear. Fortunately, Big Brother has already vented his anger. So, he hasn't transferred it to me." That fourth brother bear didn't open his eyes. He was courting death on his own. How could he be as wise, far-sighted, and decisive as I am? Brothers are used as calamities. Earthcracker, you shameless little beast. Just wait for me. Bear Mountain's cries of grief and indignation could be heard from the field. In fact, it seemed as if he was weeping blood and destroying his liver. He was pounding the ground with his hands. And he was banging his head against the ground. He was extremely frustrated and angry. His head must be fine because the ground had been deformed. June Moxie's eyebrows twitched wildly. This Tian Fa Forest discipline method is really different from the rest. Mei Shuyan had intentionally or unintentionally cast a sidelong glance at June Moxie after she had finished dealing with the two Beast Kings. It was clear that she was trying to show off her strength. "I'll punish you like this if you dare to provoke me again. But you can continue to act presumptuously if you think that you're more resistant to punishment than these two. I'll be happy to have a channel to vent my anger. So I won't mind." June Moxie curled his lips. However, he didn't take it to heart. "You don't mind, and I don't mind either." His big eyes wandered on Mei Shuyan's face. Then, they slid down and looked at Mei Shuyan's towering breasts. Then, he smiled mischievously. Then, he continued to look down, and his gaze stopped on Mei Shuyan's pert buttocks for a while. Then, he raised his head and faced Mei Shuyan with a faint smile. His meaning was very obvious. "You're bragging. You think you can punish me? This young master has a way to punish you." Mei Shuyan felt as if there was a pair of invisible hands wandering around her body. She couldn't help but bite her lips. She glared at him fiercely. Then she said, "It should be enough now, right? Both of them have gone through this upgrade. Their strength has basically climbed to the level of a great master. They can easily defeat Lei Bao Yu and Bu Kuang Feng. With the two of them working together, even if 3 or 4 experts like Ning Wuqing were to come, they would still be able to escape unscathed. Their strength has undoubtedly increased by a large margin, but they still can't go on the road for the time being." June Moxie shook his head. They still need a few more days to adapt to their new speed and power. If they were to immediately participate in a life and death battle after such a sudden upgrade, they would be sending themselves to their deaths. It won't be too late to leave after they have adapted to everything, especially Tiger King. His original strength was much weaker than Bear King's. Moreover, he has just received external medicine. If he can't control it as he pleases, it will easily lead to adverse effects. Mei Shuyan nodded slowly. "What you say makes sense. Then, let's stay for a few more days. Also, I will use this time to ask my master in detail about what other medicinal ingredients are needed. I will make a list for them to bring back. This time, with your orders, we will need a lot of medicinal ingredients from all over the world. Although the amount we have now is not small, it is only a small part of the total. We can't be careless in this matter. We have to treat this matter as the most important matter." Mei Shuyan's expression became serious. She said, "You don't have to worry about the medicinal ingredients. Leave it all to us Xian beasts. We must get all the medicinal ingredients we need at all costs. Even if there are none in Tian Fa Forest, as long as they exist in this world, I will find a way to get them. You don't need to be so extreme. I only said that I would let you see the true face of the three holy lands. But I didn't say that the Xian beasts must be completely opposed to the entire human race. This time, they will be intercepted on their way back. I believe that they will be able to escape calmly because they underestimate their strength. But the three holy lands may have already figured out the situation when they come back to deliver the medicinal ingredients. So, they won't be able to rely on just the two of them. So, we must double our manpower. By the way, Crane King has the ability to fly. So, it will be a foolproof plan if he carries the medicinal ingredients. June Moxie thought for a moment. I've also thought of this point. After all, this is the first time. We can catch them off guard. But it won't be so smooth next time. It will be safer if Third Crane carries the medicinal ingredients in the air. But the amount of medicinal ingredients that can be carried will be relatively small. It will be safe, but the time needed for the round trip will be. Mei Shuyan said. At this moment, Big Bear groaned and rubbed his buttocks as he got up and limped into the house. He looked docile and obedient, just like a lamb. Also, there are 10 of these pills. Each of you will take one. The 4 of you can take it now. You don't need to deliberately refine this medicine. June Moxie turned his palm. A small jade bottle appeared in his palm. Don't need to refine it? What kind of strange medicine is this? Mei Shuyan and the other three's eyes lit up. This is the soul-gathering pill. June Moxie smiled mischievously. It won't increase your martial power or speed after taking it. So, there's no need to refine it. What's the use of it? Earthcracker opened his eyes wide. He was very curious. This medicine has only one effect. It gathers the spiritual energy of the world. It can increase the speed of the real elemental energy in your body by 3 times when you practice martial arts. In other words, 1 year of practice after taking the soul-gathering pill will be equivalent to 3 years of practice before taking it. June Moxie blinked his eyes and smiled mischievously. The 4 of them opened their eyes wide and inhaled at the same time. This is another heaven-defying medicine. Mei Shuyan's face turned red. She gently took the jade bottle. Then, she cast a glance at June Moxie and said in a low voice, "Then, I won't say thank you. You're asking for such a precious thing, and you're not saying thank you. What does this mean? We're family. So, there's no need to be so polite. Saying thank you is like treating me as an outsider." June Moxie laughed heartily. Mei Shuyan's face turned red again. She took out 4 pills, and the 4 of them quickly took them. Bear Mountain grimaced and sucked in a cold breath. His whole body was aching. So, he hurriedly swallowed the pills. However, he didn't forget to tease them a little. That's natural. Elder sister and brother-in-law are here for the same purpose. So, there's no need to thank me. After a while, we'll have to sleep in the same bed and under the same blanket. Chapter 533. Bang! Bear Mountain screamed as he was sent flying backwards like a rocket. Then, he fell back to his previous position with a loud bang. He had been trapped by the world cage this time and had been kicked out. So, he didn't have any leeway to unload the force. So, he fell hard on the ground and almost fainted. Mei Shuyan was standing at the door. Her face was flushed, and her eyes were radiating an angry radiance. This guy really doesn't know how to talk. What do you mean by sleeping on the same bed and burrowing into the same quilt? Isn't this nonsense? It would be bad if elder sister and brother-in-law didn't burrow into the same quilt. Earthcracker stroked his beard in schadenfreude. He savored the fragrance of the pills in his mouth and started to flatter Mei Shuyan without restraint. He shook his head, and his face was full of complacency. But he didn't realize that his flattery was even more off-target than Bear Mountain's. Big Bear had failed in his attempt to flatter Big Bear. Instead, he had slapped the horse's leg. However, Earthcracker's self-righteous words had added fuel to the fire. In fact, he had slapped the horse's hoof. Therefore, he was also in a tragic situation. Who said that you can bully an old bear, but not a tiger? Brothers should be in trouble together. You also get lost. World cage. Mei Shuyan flew into a rage. Bang! Bang! Earthcracker let out a blood-curdling screech. The latter half of his words got stuck in his throat. Then he flew high in the air while waving his hands and feet. He then flew high in the air and crashed into the gate of the elegant fragrance courtyard. He broke through the gate and continued to fly until he crashed into the opposite wall. Then he bounced back with a bang. He felt as if he was seeing stars in front of his eyes. In fact, it seemed as if the galaxy had suddenly appeared in front of him. He shook his head in a daze and fell to the ground. He was even more miserable than Big Bear. Mei Shuyan furiously flicked her sleeves and went back to her room. June Mo. Xie touched his nose. I can't take advantage of this situation anymore. I don't have a shield anymore. If I'm not careful, I might get another world cage on my head. So, I had no choice but to leave. Behind him, Qian Sun's Serpent Queen looked at June Moxie's back, and her expression changed. Suddenly, she sighed softly, and there was a hint of sadness in her voice the next day. The June family's adoption ceremony finally opened after a long time of preparation. Accepting an adopted daughter shouldn't involve so many people, especially since it wasn't old Master Jun Zhan Tian who was going to accept an adopted daughter. Instead, it was Jun Wu Yi who was going to accept an adopted daughter. Therefore, such a big fanfare seemed a little strange. But Guan Qinghan's identity was very sensitive and coupled with the disturbance caused by the rotten scholars. This adoption ceremony was even more grand than the founding of a nation. At the very least, there weren't so many important people at the founding of the Tianxiang Kingdom. Not only did the emperor and empress arrive together, but the 3 princes and a princess also personally came to congratulate her. Even the heads of the major families in the capital had come to congratulate her. Countless officials and generals from all over the country had come to congratulate her. Then, the major families of Xianxi arrived one after another. The Situ clan, the Sikong clan, the Bailey clan, the Duanmu clan. One by one, the illustrious names were gradually announced from the mouth of the master of ceremonies. Everyone in the hall exclaimed in surprise. Although these people weren't officials of the secular world, they were all legendary figures who had long been famous. Today, for a trivial matter like the adoption of a daughter by Jun Wui, people from all over the country had rushed over. What did this mean? What did it mean? Suddenly, there was a commotion in the crowd. Congratulations to the 3rd General Jun for adopting Miss Guan as his daughter. The fierce Gale swordsman, Feng Wanyun, congratulates you. The usually calm voice of the master of ceremonies Tian Xian, Song Shang, was trembling. The hurricane swordsman, Feng Wanyun, was a legendary figure, one of the newly promoted 8 great masters. To think that he had also come here. The hall was instantly silent. In the eyes of the crowd, a green-robed man walked straight and like an unsheathed sword. His expression was cold, his facial features smooth and firm, and his gaze was as sharp as a knife. Wherever he looked, people would feel as if they were being stabbed by a sharp sword. Feng Wanyun. Jun Wui was pleasantly surprised. Feng Wanyun's words were still ringing in his ears when he knew that he was in a desperate situation. Jun Wui, if you don't die today, I, Feng Wanyun, will drink with you and have a good chat. I, Feng Wanyun, see you in danger today, but I am powerless. I am sorry. I will repay the Jun family in the future. Farewell. This was the most touching sentence that Jun Wui had heard before the battle. 3rd General Jun, I, Feng Wanyun, have come to ask for a cup of wine. 3rd General, you won't mind, right? Seeing Jun Wui, Feng Wanyun showed a rare warm smile. Not all. Not at all. I am very grateful. Please, 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 don't call me 3rd General. If you don't mind, just call me by my name. Jun Wui said warmly as he held Feng Wanyun's hand and walked into the hall. The big families stepped forward to chat with him. The fierce Gale swordsman, Feng Wanyun, was ranked last amongst the 8 great masters. But he was the only one who couldn't be provoked aside from the cold-blooded master, Lei Wu Bei. He would draw his sword and kill people. He hated evil as if it was his personal enemy. Feng Wanyun nodded at them indifferently and walked over, not bothering to speak to these clan heads at all. Everyone smiled bitterly, but they all knew Feng Huanyun's temperament. He was a cold and arrogant person. Back in the Tian Fa forest, Li Ju Tian had dared to draw his sword even though he was no match for the great master Li Ju Tian. In fact, he had even nearly killed Li Ju Tian's son. Li Ju Tian was a genuine great master. He was one of the 8 great masters of the world. Moreover, everyone was shocked when they arrived at the Jun family's residence. Although the Jun family's strength wasn't very strong, but they had the solitary falcon at their helm. So, they couldn't be underestimated. Moreover, Jun Tian and Jun Wu Yi, father and son, had unexpectedly reached the spirit Xian level. This news was enough to make them inexplicably shocked. The Tianxiang Empire was a place where even Shen Xian was not present. But now, there were 2 Shen Xian experts, and they were from the same family. More importantly, they were from the God of War's family. Although the Jun family was not very important, they had collected detailed information about them. After all, they were the #1 military family in the country. According to the information, Jun Tian was only at the level of Tian Xian. So how did he become Shun Xian? Although Jun Wui had risen by accident, he was only a cripple at the level of Tian Xian. How did he suddenly become a Shun Xian expert? And he was healthy. Everything had happened so suddenly, so mysteriously, and so inconceivably. Haha, Feng Huanyun, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time. You're finally here. Let's go to the backyard and have a fight. Maybe I'll give you some benefits. Solitary Eagle came out with a burst of laughter. His whole body was filled with fighting spirit. A few days ago, Jun Wui had eaten the heavenly vitality pill and successfully raised his strength to the level of Shen Xian. Then, the 3 of them had taken the vitality gathering pill. Jun Wui had taken the vitality linkage pill, and the 3 of them had greatly improved their strength. This was nonsense. If it did not improve their strength, it would be ridiculous. The solitary falcon had been very happy lately. The falcon god had never imagined that he would be tied to this place because of a bet. However, he had improved his strength so much in less than a year. Not only did his skills and techniques have a breakthrough, but even his strength and speed had increased by an unbelievable amount. His strength had increased by at least 2 levels compared to before. The realms above the supreme martial artists that were unreachable in the past seemed to be within reach now. During this period of time, Solitary Eagle felt like he was dreaming. If he did not return to his hometown after becoming rich, it would be like walking at night in luxurious clothes. Now that his strength had improved, it would be like not returning to his hometown after becoming rich. It would be like not returning to his hometown after becoming rich. Now that his greatest rival, Feng Huanyun, had suddenly arrived, it was like a pie falling from the sky for Solitary Eagle. Feng Huanyun stared at Solitary Eagle for a long time before a look of extreme shock appeared in his eyes. He realized that although Solitary Eagle's Xian cultivation was strong and his movement techniques were above his own, they were still on par. In the Tian Fa forest, this fellow had defeated him with some strange moves, and Feng Huanyun had always been unconvinced. After thinking about it, he finally had the confidence to solve it. This time, he had come to the Jun family with the intention of challenging Solitary Eagle. But now that Solitary Eagle was standing in front of him, Feng Huanyun suddenly realized that this despicable eagle had reached a whole new level. Just by standing there, he was already giving off a strong sense of oppression. Even the air seemed to be a little sticky. Feng Huanyun was very familiar with this feeling. Only when facing an opponent that he could not match would he have this feeling of having his hands and feet tied. Could it be that I am really inferior to him? But is this person really Solitary Eagle? How is this possible? Even if he was facing the great master of life and death, Shi Changshao, or the cold-blooded master, Lei Wu Bei, he would not feel so defeated. How did Solitary Eagle make such a huge improvement in such a short time? Could it be that he has already surpassed Shi Changshao? Could it be that he is chasing after Li Ju Tian? After a long time, Feng Wan Yun revealed a bitter smile and continued to stare at Solitary Falcon without blinking. There's no need to fight. I'm no match for you now. There's no point in fighting anymore. Solitary Eagle was very disheartened. Last night, he had fought with Earthcracker, the Tiger King, after his strength had increased. Although he seemed to have the upper hand because of his excellent agility, Solitary Eagle knew that he had suffered a great loss. Chapter 534. First update. I want to do acupuncture today and came back late, but I really want to know, how did you improve? Feng Wanyan stared at him without blinking. For this martial arts maniac, improving his strength was the most important thing in the world. I ate an elixir. Solitary Eagle snorted, his belly full of anger. I'm telling the truth. Do you believe me? I believe you, Feng Wanyan said solemnly. Without the help of an elixir, how could he have improved so quickly? Solitary Eagle was completely speechless. This idiot. The two great masters entered the back hall, and the hall became lively again. Everyone looked at Junjian Tian and his son in a different way. How much face did they have? One great master was watching over the house, and another great master came to congratulate them. At this time, Song Shang's trembling voice rang out again. Congratulations to 3rd General Jun for getting a daughter. The great master of life and death, Shi Changshao, has come to congratulate him. Present a pair of jade scepters. Boom! Another clap of thunder sounded. Everyone was stunned like a chicken that had been struck by lightning, and they didn't know what to say. Then the great master of life and death, Shi Changshao, walked in with a smile on his face. Junjian Tian personally welcomed him into the inner hall. Although Grandpa Jun had always been calm, he couldn't help but feel proud at this moment. Among all the civil and military officials in the imperial court, who had as much face as him, Grandpa Jun suddenly felt that today was the most glorious day of his life. And all of this was thanks to his grandson. With a grandson like this, what more could he ask for? So Grandpa Jun was extremely proud, and his grin almost reached the back of his ears. Suddenly, the great master of cold blood, Lei Wu Bei, has come to congratulate him, and a treasured sword. Song Shang's lips were stuttering, and his eyes were wide open. Who would have thought that this cold-blooded madman would also come, and even send a congratulatory gift? The entire hall was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone felt a sense of absurdity from the bottom of their hearts. Is this world really so crazy? Are the 8 great masters going to have a meeting here today? Why are they coming one after another? There are already 4 of them. Look at the Jun family's face. F***CK. Not too long ago, that bunch of rotten scholars actually wanted to give him a hard time. If this wasn't simply asking for death, then what was? With their meager strength, how could they deal with the old Jun family? It was not enough at all. It wasn't even considered as delivering food. It was simply asking for trouble. Everyone looked at the Jun family members with reverence in their eyes. Even their voices had become much softer. He was afraid that one of the 4 great killing gods would be summoned. That would be terrible. Any one of these 4 great supremes would be able to deal with an ordinary aristocratic family as easily as turning over a palm. In an instant, he would be able to kill all of them. In the main room, the eyes of His Majesty, who was sitting at the head of the table, suddenly became unusually complicated. This table was filled with the top-notch bigwigs of the capital's imperial court. They had absolutely no connection with those profound Qi families. However, everyone had a solemn expression on their faces. Their gazes were complicated, and no one knew what they were thinking. A long while passed. Then the emperor sighed and said, "It turns out that the Jun family is so prestigious. Even I am somewhat envious." He had said this in a joking tone. Everyone laughed along with him. However, everyone clearly understood in their hearts that His Majesty wasn't joking. The 4 great supremes were people that even the emperor would find it difficult to invite. In fact, it was impossible for even one of them to do so. However, these 4 people had all come to the Jun family uninvited. What did this mean? It was obvious. The steward of the Guan family, Dong Lu, was smiling widely. His face was flushed, and it seemed as if every hair on his head was excited. He had never dreamed of such a grand occasion. In fact, he hadn't even dared to think about it. The entire Guan family had lost face after what had happened to Guan Xinghan. In fact, there had even been a rumor that the Guan family's discipline wasn't strict. Even the servants of the Jun family felt honored. They walked with their heads held high and their waists out. Their waists were also straighter. The three great supremes have come to congratulate our third master. Li Yuren's face was pale in the crowd of congratulatory guests. She watched her master enter the inner hall. Her heart was filled with bitterness. She suddenly felt that the gap between her and Jun Moxie was like that of heaven and earth. In fact, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. I'm afraid that there's no hope of catching up with this gap. This guy is still fighting and walking dogs when I'm training hard. He's still flirting with women when I'm thinking of strategies. Everyone is praising me, but they're still belittling this guy. But I'm still making no progress when he's dominating the world. Why? How can this happen? I've sacrificed so much for my hopes and dreams. I've endured loneliness that most people can't bear. I've even buried my love. But I've received such a blow just when I thought that I was close to success. Could it be that all my efforts were in vain? Li Yuren's heart was full of doubts. Could it be that my efforts have been a mistake? Success doesn't depend on hard work. Does it depend on fighting and walking dogs? Everyone in the entire Tianxiang city was watching with open eyes. Who had ever seen Jun Mo Xie's genuine efforts? Li Yuren's mind was extremely unbalanced. Li Yuren sighed. She waved her hand and beckoned a servant of the Jun family. Then she asked, "Is your third young master Jumoxi here? Why can't I see him on such a lively occasion?" The servant replied respectfully, replying to the esteemed guest, "The third young master is accompanying a guest in the backyard. Perhaps he'll come over after a while." Accompanying a guest in the backyard? What kind of guest is he accompanying? Li Yuren's heart was shaken. What guest? He's even more important than the four great masters. He can make Jun Moxie ignore the emperor of Tianxiang City. He can't even meet the big shots of the imperial court. He can't even welcome the great masters. This can't be justified, right? This question and answer were unintentional. Li Yuren had asked in a casual manner. She didn't have any intention of bewitching the servant, and the servant's reply had been blurted out. But this unintentional conversation had made Li Yuren think even more deeply. Li Yuren's heart was at a loss as she looked at the Jun family's flourishing atmosphere of jubilation. He had worshipped his master, the cold-blooded great master, Lei Wu Bei, as if he were worshipping an immortal. He had thought that everything in the mortal world would be a piece of cake as long as he had the backing of this great master. However, he hadn't thought that his plans would be flawless. In fact, he had lost 8 of his fellow disciples. In fact, he hadn't even found out who the murderer was. She had always cherished and respected her master. But she was now very dissatisfied. She looked at the Jun family. They hadn't deliberately fawned over her, but they had just adopted a daughter. Yet, 3 great masters had come to congratulate them. This was the disparity between them. Is it really impossible to compare people with each other? Perhaps it's true. I used to look down on my peers with disdain. It's just that I need to look up to other people and not myself. Li Yuren sighed in her heart. She called for a servant and casually tipped him a banknote. Then, she said, "Please tell your third young master that I'd like to have a chat with him, if he has the time." The servant respectfully replied, "Young Master Li, please be at ease." This lowly servant will definitely convey these words to young Master Li. However, you absolutely cannot accept the reward. Unexpectedly, he was exceptionally determined to return the large sum of banknotes. Li Yuren was startled. She hadn't expected that a little servant of the Jun family would be able to resist the temptation of such a large sum of money. It must be known that Li Yuren had casually tipped him, but it was a banknote worth 500 taels of silver, and this servant could only get 10 taels of silver a year. But he had refused it without any hesitation. Is this the disparity between us? The servant of the Jun family was indeed not boasting. Jun Dashao was currently in the backyard accompanying a group of guests. A group of esteemed guests. In the backyard, Jun Moxie was drinking tea with the Tian Fa Beast Kings. The Bear King and the Tiger King were going to return to the Tian Fa forest tomorrow. There were many things that Jun Moxie had to handle personally. Otherwise, these two would forget something. Not only would Mei Shuyan go berserk, but Jun Moxie would also feel like crying. Besides, those esteemed guests really didn't need him. When they came out, they would only greet them with a fake smile. If they were to come out first, they would only be two-faced and hide a dagger in their smiles. That was simply torture. Jun Moxie always had a headache when it came to this kind of thing. So, he didn't plan to go out. Let's not talk about anything else. Why would Jun Dashao have to greet the Emperor of Tianxiang? Thinking about this, Old Man Jun and Third Master also felt that they might as well not let Jun Moxie attend. Anyway, he was a junior, so it was reasonable that he didn't get involved. Even if he was happy, they would be happy. As for whether everyone was happy, I didn't care so much. However, even Jun Moxie was a little surprised when he heard the arrival of the three great masters. Feng Wan Yun's arrival was rather abrupt. However, this person had always appeared and disappeared mysteriously. He had a good impression of the Jun family, and he even had a little relationship with the third uncle. So, his sudden arrival was understandable. However, the arrival of Shi Changshao and Lei Wu Bei was more thought-provoking. It seemed that the Jun family didn't have any friendship with them. Not only did they not have any friendship, but 8 of Lei Wu Bei's top 10 disciples had perished by his hands. Moreover, the only one among them had been crippled by solitary eagle. What are these two doing here? Jun Moxie wrinkled his brows. He was puzzled no matter how hard he thought about it. He had only met them once during the Battle of Tian Fa. They weren't Feng Wan Yun, so they didn't have any friendship with the Jun family. Moreover, Jun Wui's adoption of a daughter wasn't a big deal. So, it wasn't worth it for 2 great masters to personally come and congratulate them. So, these two must have come with a purpose. As for the specific purpose. Chapter 535. Jun Moxie smiled. This is obvious. So, the problem certainly exists. I think that they have 3 goals. The first one should be related to the Silver Blizzard City. The second one should be related to the Jun family and Tian Fa. Then, they should be related to your whereabouts. And the third one should be related to the pills and the alchemist. These problems are somewhat acute, but they're not difficult to deal with. So, I reckon that there are some misunderstandings in my previous judgment. So, they may have other goals. But I reckon that they're only the vanguard. And they may not be able to set off any big storm. In fact, Old Ing is strong enough to defeat any one of them. Mei Shuyan smiled faintly. That's right. They must have the ability to set off a storm even if they want to. Jun Moxie laughed heartily. Bear Mountain, Earthcracker, and the others also laughed. In this world, a bigger fist makes a bigger argument. This is an unchanging truth. Jun Moxie decided to increase the strength of the 4 Tian Fa kings after careful consideration. He didn't know why, but he was still feeling anxious in his heart. One must know that the huge amount of elixirs from Tian Fa was something that Jun Moxie and the Tian Fa kings couldn't afford to lose. Jun Moxie still felt that the strength of the 2 beast kings was too weak when they returned. In fact, they were somewhat unreliable. However, the 4 beast kings had already taken the heavenly essence, Tong Yuan and Juan Dan. So Jun Moxie didn't have any suitable elixirs on hand for the time being. But he was afraid that these people wouldn't be able to take it even if he had. So he was afraid that they wouldn't be able to take it even if he did. So he would have to rely on external help since he had already reached the limit of his own strength. I'll give each of you a suitable weapon for self-defense. This can also be considered as a farewell gift to Bear King and Tiger King. Jun Moxie pondered for a while. Then he finally said this. Mei Shuyan and Qian Sun felt a chill in their hearts when they saw how serious Jun Moxie was. One must know that the 3 godly pills were already heaven-defying existences. But Jun Moxie had given them out without batting an eyelid. But when it came to weapons, he was evidently hesitant. In other words, this weapon had probably exceeded the scope of a so-called divine weapon, and it was probably an existence that was even more heaven-defying. Not to mention anything else. Just based on June Moxie's blood of yellow flame, Mei Shuyan knew that if their strengths were equal, her Xian beast body might not be able to withstand the divine blade's slash. Only Bear Mountain and Earthcracker shook their heads. We Xian beasts don't need weapons. Moreover, the so-called divine weapons of ordinary humans were simply too light. If one didn't use them, they wouldn't feel right. Forget it. Perhaps you might like these two weapons that I'm giving you. June Moxie smiled confidently. He had already made up his mind. So, he didn't hesitate any longer. He stretched out his right hand, and two long swords appeared in his hands out of thin air. They lay quietly on the ground. It seemed as if they had been there all along. No one had seen how these two swords had appeared. Even Mei Shuyan, whose strength was far above everyone else's, hadn't sensed it. The two swords had suddenly appeared in June Moxie's hands, and they had pressed down on June Moxie's arm. So, it was obvious that their weight wasn't light. Clang! June Moxie gently pressed on the spring. The long swords issued a soft cry, and were unsheathed by half a foot. They shone brilliantly and dazzled everyone's eyes. Suddenly, a cold air assaulted their faces. Mei Shuyan and the other three blurted out at the same time, "Good swords. This is a sharp weapon." June Moxie smiled faintly. He slowly pulled out the sword from its sheath. The sword was as clear as water. Its brilliance was circulating. It had a pleasing color. It seemed like gold, but it wasn't gold. It seemed like silver, but it wasn't silver. The sword was 3 feet long. It was similar to an ordinary sword. However, its width was more than 4 fingers. It was a rare broadsword. June Moxie turned his wrist, and the long sword slowly turned in a circle. Then, he gently tossed it up. The edge of the sword pointed downwards. Then, it slowly fell towards the stone table. Screech, an almost inaudible sound was heard. Then, an incredible scene appeared in front of the 4 Beast Kings. The long sword seemed as if a red-hot piece of iron had been plunged into cold butter. It didn't stop. It continued to plunge straight into the stone table. It slid all the way down to the hilt. Mei Shuyan couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. She naturally knew that June Moxie's blood of yellow flame was a rare divine weapon, but she never imagined that he would have another such divine weapon. Furthermore, June Moxie had taken out 2 treasured swords just now, so the quality of these 2 treasured swords should be on par with each other. Then, June Moxie just said that he would give each of us a weapon. The quality of the weapons should be about the same. Could it be that the speed of the forging of weapons in this world is so shocking? Then what use is the body of the Xian beast that we are so proud of? We have been waiting for so many years in Tian Fa. Have we become frogs at the bottom of a well? But when she thought about it again, she instantly understood. If the world was really filled with divine weapons like this, the Tian Fa forest would have been destroyed a long time ago. Mei Shuyan couldn't help but rejoice. The owner of such a divine weapon was him. Thank goodness it was him. Mei Shuyan lightly patted the table with her palm, and the long sword that was deeply embedded in the table bounced out with a so sound. It flew up in the air, and Mei Shuyan caught in her hand. She couldn't help but be shocked. This sword looked only a little wider than an ordinary sword, but it actually weighed more than 100 jin. It must be known that an ordinary sword would at most weigh 6 to 7 jin, even if it was specially forged or a heavy sword specially made for the battlefield. It was rare for it to weigh more than 15 jin. The weight of this sword clearly defied this common sense. Even a big stick or an iron awl would be too much for such a heavy sword. The sword was a light weapon, so it would affect the flexibility and stability of the sword if it was too heavy. In fact, it would be disadvantageous to one's agility, footwork, and Xianqi. Therefore, not many humans could use such a heavy sword. In fact, it seemed as if it was tailor-made for the Beast Kings of Tian Fa. This sword is undoubtedly a good sword. It's a pity that it's a little cumbersome. I can also use it, but I might not be able to use it as I like. Mei Xuyan's slender fingers lightly flicked the blade of the sword. Then, a dragon's roar rose up in spirals and lingered for a long time. In fact, it seemed as if it would linger for 3 days. Mei Xuyan had said that it was difficult to use it as she liked, but she couldn't bear to part with it for a while. Then, she handed it over to Bear Mountain. Having witnessed such a godly weapon, Big Bear was already impatient. In most situations, he didn't use weapons, but it didn't mean that he didn't know how to use them. It was just that ordinary human weapons in his hands were basically like an elephant dancing with an embroidery needle. They were too weak, so he refused to use them. But he liked this sword from the bottom of his heart the moment he saw it. He took it and weighed it in his hands, and he burst with joy. Such a weight is really easy to use. This brother-in-law of mine is really speechless. He's really my brother-in-law. Bear Mountain laughed heartily. Then he leapt forward and swung the sword in the air. Suddenly, a dragon's roar and tiger's roar resounded in the courtyard. But it sounded like fireworks falling from the sky, and it seemed like snow had dyed the mountains and rivers. The cold wind whistled, and the figure of the man disappeared. Earthcracker also couldn't help but grab the other sword. He was just as happy. It would be a lie to say that he didn't like such a weapon. The Beast Kings of Tion Fa had been envious of the fact that humans had weapons on them ever since they had taken human form. But they could only use their flesh and blood to fight, and the weapons that humans had were not suitable for them. So they had been longing for a weapon that they could use for many, many years. So, how could they not be ecstatic when they suddenly held a divine weapon in their hands? In fact, whether it was a divine weapon or not was secondary. But the fact that it was easy to use was its greatest value. With a loud roar, Earthcracker took the lead and leapt forward. Then, he clashed with Bear Mountain. The two swords clashed, and the sound of wind and thunder could be heard amidst the whistling of the swords. The sword light was like snow, and the sword energy soared to the heavens. A long while passed before the two of them put away their swords in high spirits. Then they walked over with beaming smiles on their faces. They held the swords in their bosoms, as if they were treasures. In fact, they were afraid that someone would snatch them away. In fact, it seemed as if they had suddenly obtained their most beloved treasure. In fact, it seemed as if they wouldn't let go of it ever again. This sword is too awesome. Ha ha ha, I declare that this is mine. Bear Mountain was smiling so widely that his eyes couldn't even be seen. He was immensely proud of himself as he announced. Earthcracker lowered his head and carefully wiped the blade of the sword with the lapel of his robe. His movements were very careful, and his hands and feet were very light. In fact, it seemed that he wouldn't have done this even if his wife had given birth to a tiger cub. Aren't you going to thank young Master June for giving you this sword? Do you think that you can take such a priceless treasure just because you say so? Why are you two idiots so unreasonable? Can't you two give me some face? Mei Xuyan raised her willowy eyebrows and shouted angrily. Mei Xuyan felt that these two fellows had thoroughly thrown away her face ever since they had come here. Dog meat can't be served at the main table. Mei Xuyan heaved a deep sigh in her heart. Elder sister, why are you like this? Why are you thanking us? Isn't it only natural that our brother-in-law is giving us this? We are his brother-in-law. So, what's the big deal about giving us 2 swords? Isn't that right, brother-in-law? Bear Mountain grinned and laughed heartily in a self-satisfied manner. This guy is so thick-skinned. He's hundreds of years old, but he's openly calling a 17 or 18-year-old boy brother-in-law. Moreover, he's even calling himself his brother-in-law. And his face isn't even blushing. Earthcracker nodded in agreement. It was obvious that this guy was thinking the same thing. However, he was a bit more perceptive. He understood that there were some things that couldn't be said directly. Mei Xuyan's face turned red. She suddenly became angry. Shut up. What kind of nonsense are you talking about, you idiot? Is it because yesterday's sparring wasn't enough? So, I've got a new sword today. So I'll spar with you again. Her eyes emitted a cold light. She was about to attack. Bear Mountain immediately became dispirited. He didn't dare to utter another word. He was even more obedient than a baby bear. Earthcracker, who hadn't uttered a word, shrunk his neck. How is this a Tiger King? Even a kitten isn't this obedient. Chapter 536. What truth? That's nonsense. What brother-in-law or younger brother-in-law was there to talk about? That's ridiculous. Mei Shuiyan's face turned even redder, and she scolded fiercely. Unforgivable. How is it not the truth? Jun Mo, Xie, said seriously, Shui Yin. Actually, the two of us have already done that. I think we're just short of the bridal chamber. We've already seen each other what we should see, and touched each other what we should touch. We know each other very well. Is there a need to be more explicit? Mei Shuyan was so angry that her fingers started to tremble. Jun Moxie, you're too shameless. Being shameless is better than not having a wife. Jun Moxie said happily. Besides, it's not just the two of them who have swords. You and Qian Sun naturally have swords too. It's hard for you to use their swords. I've specially made one for you. Hearing this, Qian Sun's Serpent Queen's eyes lit up. She bit her lips and looked at Mei Shuiyan's expression. She didn't dare to say anything. We have one too. Mei Shuiyan heaved a sigh of relief. This guy finally changed the topic. She said fiercely, then why aren't you taking it out? Yes, yes. Jun Moxie sang. He turned his body, twisted his buttocks, and stretched out his right hand. He shouted, change. Shua. 2 swords appeared in his hands. It was still so sudden. The 2 swords that appeared in his hands were much thinner and smaller than the previous 2 swords. The swords had a beautiful shape. It was obvious that they were swords for women. This time, Mei Shui Yin could be said to have mobilized all of her spiritual power and 100% of her spiritual sense to sense all of Jun Mo Xie's movements. She did not let down her guard at all, but she still could not find out how he had taken out these 2 swords. They had just appeared out of nowhere, so suddenly. Mei Shuyan was amazed. Only God knew how many more things that no one could understand about this mysterious young man. Jun Moxie took out one of the swords and handed it to Qian Sun's Serpent Queen. Qian Sun pulled out the sword and looked at it. She couldn't help but cry out in joy. She couldn't bear to part with it. Her joy was definitely not any less than that of the Bear King and the Tiger King. The sword that Qian Sun obtained was shining with a golden light, as if it was made of gold, and the craftsmanship was even more marvelous. It was actually a rare soft sword. The body of the sword twisted like a spirit snake, smooth and natural. As it trembled and swayed, it flickered with an unpredictable light. The tip of the sword was actually forked like the tongue of a poisonous snake, emitting a cold light. This sword could slash, slice, stab, twist, lift, and swing. It had a few special characteristics that the other swords didn't have. It was directly made for the Snake King. Only the King of Snakes could bring out the strongest power of this soft sword. Among the 4 swords, this was the only one that Jun Moxie had specially made. It was tailor-made for the Serpent King. He had used up thousands of kilograms of gold and the power of gold to refine this golden soft sword that was made entirely out of soft gold. The Snake King was filled with joy. He looked at Jun Moxie affectionately and couldn't wait to play with it. One moment, he wrapped it around his wrist. The next moment, he wrapped it around his waist. The soft sword seemed to have a mind of its own. It changed into different shapes in the hands of the Snake King, from the tip to the hilt. It was as if it was a living snake with a mind of its own. The more Qian Sun, Serpent Queen, looked at it, the more she liked it. The more she played with it, the more she couldn't bear to put it down. She squinted her eyes happily and placed the soft sword on her face. Jun Mo Xie laughed heartily. He grabbed the scabbard and bent it. The scabbard also bent into a circular shape. One end of the scabbard was connected to the hilt of the sword. It was actually a belt. It turned out that Jun Moxie had put in a lot of effort on this scabbard. It could be said that he had a unique and exquisite mind. Jun Moxie smiled and said, I think we should name this sword Snake King's sword. When you don't use it, you can wrap it around your waist. It will be easier to confuse people. Once you draw the sword, not only will it be convenient for you, it will also be able to catch people off guard. But this is the best way to use this sword. Green Hunter, you should think carefully about how to draw this sword from your waist at the fastest speed. I personally think that this sword will be a great magic weapon for you to defeat your enemies. The Qian Sun Serpent Queen's face was flushed with excitement. She nodded her head and grabbed the scabbard to study it. Mei Shuiyin sighed in her heart. She felt that the favor she owed Jun Mo Xie was getting bigger and bigger. First, he had given her dozens of rare and precious elixirs. Now, he had obtained 4 divine swords. Looking at the Tiger King, Bear King, and Snake King. One was smiling foolishly while hugging his sword, one was wiping his sword as if he was serving his master, and the last one was experimenting non-stop with a look of excitement and delight. It was already impossible for him to not owe them a favor, even if he wanted to. Even the 3 Holy Lands might not be able to take out a divine sword of this level. But Jun Moxie had given them 4 of them. Even with Mei Shuiyin's vast experience, she couldn't help but be shocked by this brat's generosity. Furthermore, he must have many weapons of this level in his hands. Tian Fa still had many Beast Kings, and with Jun Moxie's character, it was impossible for him to give away the Bear, Tiger, and Snake Kings and ignore the other Beast Kings. Although it was already a huge favor to accept these 4 swords, but it was still a good thing to have more. Thinking of this, Mei Shuiyin couldn't help but blush. What's wrong with me? Could it be that I'm addicted to taking advantage of others? It's really a sin, ah. How could she not know that this brat Jun Moxie had bad intentions? This fellow was never someone who was willing to suffer losses. Perhaps if she owed him too much, this fellow would really ask for the debt to be repaid. With Jun Moxie's thick skin, Mei Shuiyin believed that he would do such a thing. Not only could he do it, he would do it confidently and confidently, without any change in expression. From the way this fellow was getting more and more impudent towards her, the moment he raised any conditions, his first target would probably be her. What should she do then? If he asked her to repay him with her body, would she be able to refuse? This fellow already had several beauties by his side. Could it be that she, the dignified Beast King of Tian Fa, would actually have to become his concubine? At that time, wouldn't it be like what he said, "Little thing, follow me, and I'll rub your butt every day"? Thinking of this, Mei Shuiyin's face was burning up. She glared at Jun Moxie hatefully, but what made her even more flustered was that she felt that she actually didn't have much of an aversion towards this matter. What's wrong with me? This is really ridiculous. This look from her caused Jun Moxie to feel a wave of panic. He hurriedly looked around and sized himself up. I only said a few words just now, but I didn't offend her. I gave away 4 divine weapons in one go. Why is this lady suddenly angry again? Could it be that this young master gave the wrong gift? Did I kiss up to the wrong person? But, looking at the situation, it doesn't seem like it. How would Jun Moxie know that Mei Shuiyin's thoughts were so jumpy? In just a short while, she was already thinking about the wedding night. After calming herself down, Mei Shuiyin raised her hand. Jun Moxie only felt a slight breeze, and the sword in his hand had already disappeared. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Mei Shuiyin was quietly sitting on the stone bench, carefully admiring the sword. Only one of the 4 swords is left. So this must be for me? The blush on Mei Shuiyin's face had not receded, but she pretended that she didn't care. She used this tone and said lightly. However, even super idiots like the Bear King and the Tiger King could tell that her tone wasn't normal. The 2 Beast Kings looked at each other and winked mysteriously for a while. Then, they went back to playing with their divine swords in tacit understanding. However, their ears were perked up in a daze. Of course, other than you, Shuiyin, who else is worthy of using such a divine sword? Jun Moxie smiled humbly, attentively flattering her. Oof, nonsense. Mei Shuiyin snorted coldly, as if she was scolding him harshly. But Tiger King and Bear King immediately winked at each other. Boss is happy. Why does this sound like the legendary flirting? In all fairness, Mei Shuiyin's sword was the most beautiful among the 4 swords. It was small and elegant, exquisite and sharp. The sword body was long and slender, and the hilt was just right for one to hold. It was smooth and natural, and the sharpness even carried the aura of a king. Even someone as arrogant as Mei Shuiyin couldn't help but admit that Jun Moxie had good foresight and unique craftsmanship. This sword was given to her, and it was a perfect match, especially the pure white body of the sword, which was like white jade, and the white robe that he usually liked to wear. It was really a perfect combination. It was natural, and it had the feeling of being flawless. "It must have been hard on you," Mei Shuyin said lightly, but she used the tone of a superior person praising a junior. "Not at all, not at all. For you, Shuiyin, I did not hesitate to go up a mountain of swords and plunge into a pot of boiling oil, through a hail of bullets, and face death with equanimity. I will die 100 times without regrets, 10,000 times without hesitation. Even 100 million deaths would be worth it." Jun Moxie shook his head and began to express his emotions. Ugh! Bear King, Tiger King, and Snake King made vomiting expressions as they ran out, far away from this shameless person. And it could also be considered as creating space and time for this fellow to flirt with their boss. Mei Shuiyin snorted. She was obviously blushing, but she pretended that she didn't hear anything and only focused on admiring the sword in her hand. This fellow is like this. Give him a bit of color, and he can open a dye shop. Give him a bit of sunlight, and he will dare to shine on the earth. Might as well ignore him and let him do whatever he wants. The three Beast Kings were playing with the swords in the yard, but they were absent-minded. Their eyes kept glancing at the two people over there. Bear King and Tiger King had a look of gossip on their faces. "Old Nine, guess what's next?" Bear Mountain winked excitedly. "I guess it's going to be a kiss," Earthcracker said in a philosophical manner, looking like a philosopher in love. "I don't think so." Bear Mountain shook his head disapprovingly, as if he was very experienced. "In my experience, I think it should be a tight hug, the kind that makes it hard to breathe." "How is that possible? Don't you see brother-in-law licking his lips? This is obviously a prelude to a kiss." "I think it's going to be this one," Earthcracker retorted sarcastically. He also licked his lips and swallowed his saliva. Chapter 537. Stupid. How can you be so stupid? How can you kiss if you don't hug? Don't pretend to understand when you don't. It's not a mistake to be ignorant, but pretending to be knowledgeable when you don't have any knowledge is an unforgivable mistake. Bear Mountain scolded. "Shut up, you two idiots." The two Beast Kings jumped in fright when they heard this. They turned their heads to look and saw that the Snake King's complexion had turned ashen. An ominous glint flickered in her eyes as she glared at them. The Snake King's sword was swaying in her hand. In fact, it seemed as if it was a venomous snake that was about to devour someone. In that instant, both the Tiger King and the Bear King had a feeling that if they dared to say another word, the Snake King would definitely draw her sword and fight to the death with them. They couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. What's going on? The two Beast Kings were confused. How did Snake King's temper suddenly become so irritable? The two Beast Kings were getting more and more confused. It seems that Snake King's temper has gotten worse since they arrived in Tianxiang. It has developed to the point where he's like a barrel of gunpowder and will explode at any moment. Could it be that he's with Big Brother? But you don't have Big Brother's strength. Let alone two. You can't even deal with one, right? The two Beast Kings rolled their eyes and silently cursed. He's actually scolding the wise and wise Bear King and Tiger King as idiots. He's really courageous. The three Beast Kings didn't expect that the two people inside wouldn't make any further movements. They just sat there quietly. Mei Shuiyin kept her head down and fiddled with her sword. Jun Moxie had a smile on his face and was quietly watching them. Neither of them made any movements. They were like two motionless statues and were quietly letting the wind of time pass between them. The breeze blew, and Mei Shuyin's skirt and hair fluttered in the wind. A gentle breeze blew past. Jun Moxie's sleeves fluttered in the wind. His eyes were ancient. The two of them just sat there, but it was like a beautiful painting, as if they could sit there until the end of time. Such tranquility, such carefreeness, and such warmth had left even the thick-skinned Big Bear and Earthcracker in a daze. Even the furious Snake King had been left dumbstruck by this scene. They had calmly watched this scene, and it felt their hearts brimming with warmth and emotion. Just at this moment, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard. Someone was hurriedly rushing over. A servant hurriedly pushed open the courtyard door and said, "Young master, the ceremony is about to begin. Old master and third master are asking you to hurry over. You cannot be absent at this crucial moment." The servant hadn't even finished speaking when he saw the three of them glaring at him with murderous intent. In an instant, he felt his hair stand on end. He couldn't help but be terrified to the extreme, and he almost fell to the ground. How could a small servant like him withstand the wrath of the three beast kings? They hadn't unleashed their full strength and hadn't released their killing intent. But it was still not something that he could withstand. "I know. I'll be right there." Jun Moxie's clear voice was heard. The servant felt his entire body relax as he heard Jun Moxie's voice. He couldn't help but gasp for breath. His entire body was drenched in sweat. "Shui-Yin, you go ahead and make arrangements for their journey tomorrow. Don't forget the things that they need to pay special attention to. Well, I'll send someone else to deliver the things that they've bought to the Tian Fa forest. So let them travel lightly this time. I'll go ahead and greet them. I'll leave everything here to you." Jun Moxie looked at Mei Shuiyin and said in a soft voice. Mei Shuiyin still didn't raise her head. She only calmly said, "Don't worry. Those two beast kings first gained 50 years of cultivation. Then their speed increased by 3 times. Then their cultivation speed increased by another 3 times. Now, they even have a godly weapon that can double their strength. If these two still can't return, then there's no need for them to return." Jun Moxie laughed and turned around to leave. He left behind Mei Shuiyin, minding her own business and reprimanding the two beast kings. He also completely ignored the resentful gazes that the two beast kings were shooting at his back. "Is there someone who wants me to go over?" Jun Moxie asked the servant as he floated forward. "Yes, young master's guess is correct. There is indeed someone at a table in the inner hall who wants to speak with young master. His Majesty the Emperor has also mentioned that he wants to see you. There is also young master Li Yuran from the Grand Preceptor's residence. He said that if young master has the time, he would like to have a good chat with you." The servant said respectfully, "Li Yuran wants to have a chat with me? Did he mention anything about it?" Jun Moxie slightly frowned. "Why does this guy want to talk to me now? What does he want to do?" As for the first 2 groups of people that the servant had mentioned, Jun Moxie didn't pay any attention to them. It wasn't that he was a big shot. Rather, Jun Moxie clearly knew that there was no room for discussion between him and those 2 groups of people. An enemy was an enemy. There was no way to resolve the situation. Even if it wasn't for the time being, it would be for sure in the future. Jun Moxie had unlimited faith in his intuition. As for that Tian Xiang's emperor, Jun Moxie didn't dare to see him. Jun Moxie was very afraid of seeing him. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control his temper the moment he saw this old thing. He was afraid that he would chop off the emperor's head. If that were to happen, things would get really messy. Grandpa Jun and Jun Wui were seated at the head of the hall. Guan Qinghan was dressed in splendid attire as she stood in front of them. Guandong Lu was smiling happily as he stood behind his daughter. The guests had spontaneously arranged themselves into several rows. Shi Changshao and the others were at the forefront. Song Shang was already prepared as the master of ceremonies. Tian Xian was acting as the master of ceremonies. This was not a small matter. Everything was already prepared. All that was left was Jun Dashao's late arrival. Seeing that Jun Moxie had arrived, Song Shang breathed a sigh of relief. He took out a roll of silk from his bosom and unfolded it in front of him as if he was reading an imperial edict. Then he read aloud, "Today is an auspicious day. The Jun family has gathered here. The arrival of the 4 great masters and the Emperor of Tianxiang has brought light to our humble Jun family's humble dwelling. I'm indebted to the old Master Jun. I'm Song Shang, and I'm trying my best to assume the position of Master of Ceremonies today. I'm inexperienced and inexperienced. So, I'm the only one to blame for my incompetence. Please don't blame my Jun family." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone began to speak words of comfort. However, most of their gazes were focused on the emperor of Tianxiang, Yang Huaiyu. The master of ceremonies' speech had been personally edited and polished by Jun Moxie. Apart from the words "four great masters," which were added by Song Shang, nothing else had changed. In particular, the words "the arrival of the emperor of Tianxiang" had been addressed as emperor instead of his majesty. It seemed to indicate that the Jun family would no longer be a subordinate of the Tianxiang Empire. How could the people present not understand this? Therefore, everyone's complexion became very strange at this moment. His Majesty's complexion couldn't help but change slightly when he heard these words. Then, he returned to normal and smiled faintly. Even his eyes didn't waver in the slightest as he greeted everyone with a smile. It seemed as if he didn't understand the hidden meaning behind these words. He is indeed worthy of being called an ambitious and ruthless person. His expression doesn't change even after being slapped in the face. This calmness alone is worthy of admiration. Jun Moxie's eyes narrowed slightly. This guy is very scheming. He's far better than anyone else. He's actually able to keep his composure. It seems that it will be very difficult to get the truth out of his mouth. On the other side, Song Shang had already begun to carry out his duties. This is an auspicious day. A joyous occasion has arrived. The third master of the Jun family, Jun Wui, has officially adopted the housekeeper's daughter, Guanqing Han, as his daughter. Henceforth, he will treat her as his own. The love between father and daughter can be seen in the world. He didn't say the wife of the original Jun family here. Instead, he said the housekeeper's daughter. It could be seen from this sentence that Guanqing Han's previous identity had completely vanished into thin air at this moment. She had become a mere memory. After a long and voluminous speech, Guanqing Han finally came to the main point. Under Song Shang's instructions, Guanqing Han gracefully stepped forward and knelt down. She kowtowed 3 times and kowtowed 9 times. When she stood up, her cheeks were already streaming with tears. Jun Wui smiled as he helped her up. He then comforted her with warm words. He took out a sparkling, luminous pearl as a gift from the adoptive father to his adopted daughter. Everyone applauded and congratulated him. Guanqing Han will henceforth become the Jun family's daughter. She will comb her hair and assume a graceful posture. She will be allowed to choose her own talents. No one is allowed to interfere. The Jun family will regard this as an irreconcilable enemy if anyone violates this rule. We will not hesitate to use our weapons to fight to the death. However, everyone knows that the Jun family's adopted daughter, Guanqing Han's previous identity, was somewhat awkward. Everything that happened in the past has been wiped out with the wind. No one is allowed to mention it. The Jun family has made a special announcement. If anyone dares to offend her in the future, the Jun family will regard this person as an irreconcilable enemy. We vow to fight to the death. The words "to fight to the death" were spoken with an awe-inspiring, murderous intent. The threat was overflowing from his words. This was Jun Moxie's usual strong and austere style. Song Shang brazenly recited Jun Moxie's iron-blooded declaration in the face of the imperial family, the Xianqi families of the continent, and even the 4 great masters. I will threaten the heroes of the world if I want to. Jun Mo Xie stood quietly in the crowd. A cold light flashed in his eyes like a bolt of lightning. His entire body was filled with arrogance. The entire place was filled with silence. The Jun family's declaration was extremely arrogant. However, everyone present, including the 4 great masters, did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. The Jun family now had the strength to say such words. They were not afraid of anyone. In this world where the bigger the fist was, the bigger the reason. The bigger the fist, the bigger the reason. Tianxian had several experts and countless Earthxian experts. The Jun family's father and son were of a higher level than Shun Xian. They also had the great master, Solitary Eagle, and Jun Moxie's mysterious master. They also had a connection with Tianfa Forest. Moreover, all the aristocratic families had the intention of befriending them. Even the divine sword of Fierce Gale, Feng Wan Yun, was clearly on the side of the Jun family. Who on the continent would dare to look at such a strong force? The ceremony is over, Song Shang shouted in a deep voice. He clasped his hands together, put away the cloth, and bowed to the crowd. The hall suddenly burst into thunderous applause. Chapter 538. From now on, she was no longer the Guanqing Han of the past, but a new person. Not only the daughter of the Guanqing Han, but also the daughter of the Jun family, and the only daughter, combing her hair, gracefully showing her graceful posture, choosing the right person to hire. A brand new life was in front of her. At such an exciting moment, Guanqing Han's eyes were involuntarily looking for a person in the crowd. Finally, she saw it. That handsome face was gently smiling at her, his eyes soft, and at the same time, she heard a faint but familiar voice. Qing Han. Guanqing Han smiled with tears in her eyes and softly replied. And suddenly, her face turned red, and her heart suddenly felt sour. For a moment, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and her heart was obviously happy, but her tears quietly flowed out. Farewell, that nightmarish day. Under the command of Song Shang, all the distinguished guests entered their respective seats in an orderly manner, ready to drink to their heart's content. The wine that the Jun family brought out this time was the best wine from the sky-high price auction, and each table was prepared with more than a dozen jars, enough to drink to one's heart's content. The banquet hadn't even begun, but the rich fragrance of the wine was already enough to make one's mouth water. Junimo Xie was just about to move forward when he saw a man walking towards him with a smile on his face. He then said in a low voice, "Third young master Jun, do you have time now? How about I have a few words with the third young master?" The person who had just arrived was tall and handsome. His expression was cultured and refined, and his gaze was warm and amiable. Every movement he made exuded a carefree aura. He was the #1 scholar in the capital, the #1 son of the Grand Preceptor, and also the confirmed successor of the Li clan, Li Yuran. "Oh, have a chat? With you?" Jun Moxie looked at Li Yuran with a smile that wasn't a smile, and tilted his head. "Do you think there is room for a chat between us? Or rather, is there a need for a chat?" Li Yuran smiled gently. Her eyes were focused as she said in a deep voice, "Yes, not only is there a space to chat, but there's also a need to chat. I believe that Jun Sunshao will be very interested in our topic." Jun Moxie turned his head and looked around. He pondered for a moment and said, "So confident? Chatting is good. Let me satisfy your wish. Anyway, in this kind of occasion, chatting with you may not be very meaningful, but at least it is better than accompanying a lot of boring people and doing boring things." Li Yuran smiled bitterly. It turned out that this fellow had also seen through it. Talking to him today was a wish of hers. Fortunately, this wish of his was quite plausible. "It's too messy here. Come with me." Jun Moxie chuckled. "Presumably, you don't want others to hear what you say to me, right? A relatively quiet space is more comfortable." Li Yuran smiled and said, "That's right. Thank you for your hospitality, third young master." Jun Moxie laughed and led the way. Li Yuran followed closely behind. In the eyes of an outsider, they looked like a pair of close friends walking hand in hand and chatting intimately. The moment Jun Xie turned his head, he clearly felt that the emperor was looking at him from afar from his seat on the high seat. Although it was just a glance, those deep eyes were filled with an indescribable, subtle meaning. Jun Moxie brought Li Yuran along the way. The two of them passed through the corridors, took a few turns, and arrived at the garden pavilion. In this early winter season, coming to the garden pavilion for a long chat. This was probably the first time such a strange thing had happened in Tianxiang Kingdom, or even the whole world. The sky was filled with dense clouds, and the wind was biting cold. The pavilion was even more windy and bright from all directions. What a great place. This was definitely the place where colds and fevers originated. This was not because Jun Moxie was arrogant and neglected his guests, but because there was no better place to go. There were many guests who had come to congratulate the Li residents today, and they had already occupied the entire front hall, main hall, and inner hall. Guan Xinghan's courtyard was currently occupied by Mei Shuiyin and the others, so it was naturally inconvenient to bring Li Yuran over. His own courtyard was also occupied by Yi Gahan and 2 handicapped children, so it was also inconvenient. As for Jun Wui's courtyard, besides the Silver Blizzard cities Han Yinming and Mu Shuetong, it was also guarded by a large number of Soul Devourer hidden guards. Naturally, it was even more inconvenient. The last place to go was Grandpa Jun's study. Wouldn't that be too much of a compliment to Li Yuran? After thinking about it for a while, Jun Moxie simply brought Li Yuran to the garden. In any case, the two of them were quite strong and were immune to the cold and heat. Li Yuran's eyes wandered around, and she clicked her tongue in amazement. Third young master, this place is truly a place of great heroes. Throughout the entire Tianxiang Empire, the harsh winter has arrived, and the fallen leaves and fallen branches are everywhere. But the Jun Residence's garden is actually so lush and green, and the spring is endless. It really makes one feel carefree and happy. I'm not trying to flatter you, but I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. Jun Moxie laughed and sat down. He raised his hand to offer his seat, but didn't immediately respond. Li Yuran didn't immediately sit down. She clasped her hands behind her back, and her back was facing Jun Moxie. She seemed to be lost in thought as she looked at the greenery around her. Jun Moxie, as far as I can remember, this is the first time the two of us have such a formal conversation. Ah, so today is your first time. Jun Moxie nodded and sighed. It's a pity that I can't take responsibility. I really can't take responsibility. I'm 8 years older than you, and you're only 18. And I'm already 25 this year. Li Yuran ignored Jun Dashao's cold joke and looked outside in a daze. Her eyebrows and eyes were full of loneliness. Third young master, do you know how I've been living all these years? I don't know why, or maybe it's because I've been suppressing some things for too long and want to talk about them, especially in front of you. Although we don't have that kind of friendship, but I really have this kind of desire. Third young master, if you have nothing to do, you might as well listen to it. Just treat it as a short story. It may not be exciting, but it's still somewhat interesting. He laughed self-deprecatingly. Without waiting for Jun Moxie's reply, he continued, These things have been suppressed in my heart for too long, but I've never had a suitable occasion or a suitable person to let it out. Today, I'm overwhelmed with emotions, and I really can't let it out. Perhaps this is the only time in my life that I'll talk about it. You talk, I'll listen. You and I may not become friends, but at this moment, I'll be a good listener. Jun Moxie's expression became serious, which was rare for him. At this moment, he could feel the loneliness in Li Yuran's heart, and he couldn't help but empathize with her. Li Yuran stood there quietly for a long time, as if she was adjusting her thoughts and organizing the words she wanted to say. Then, she slowly said, I remember it very clearly. My memory has always been very good. I still remember that when I was 3 years old, my grandfather took me away from my mother's knees. He said that since ancient times, a loving mother often leads to spoiled children, and that children who follow their mother for too long will never have a bright future. I still remember that my mother was heartbroken and crying. Her face was full of tears, and she knelt in front of my grandfather, begging him to take care of me for 1 more month. But my grandfather hardened his heart and didn't agree. He only allowed her to visit me once every month. That was the first and most profound memory in my life. It was my mother's tears. Li Yuran closed his eyes and let out a long breath of white air. A rare flush flashed across his face, as if his emotions were fluctuating violently. After a while, he continued to speak, and his voice became steady. When I was 3 years old, my grandfather hired a Tianxian master with a large sum of money, and he conducted a month-long cleansing of my meridians to lay a solid foundation for my mystical chi. It was also from that time onwards that I spent every day in this cycle. 6 hours to practice martial arts, 6 hours to play the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, 4 hours to practice swordsmanship, and the remaining 6 hours to eat and sleep. Jun Moxie sighed softly. He didn't know what to say at all. These children who were born in powerful families had a tough childhood and the tempering of their youth. It was something that ordinary children didn't even dare to think about. The more direct the child was, the more they were valued by the elders. Therefore, when these children grew up, some of them would become such debauches, so irritable, and even perverts. This was because their personalities had been extremely distorted since they were young. They needed to release the accumulated pressure that had been accumulated for a long time. Therefore, once they were in power, they would often do many tyrannical things. From a certain point of view, the tyrants of the past were also formed in this way. King Zhou of Shang, Emperor Yang of Sui, and Wang Meng, who ended the Eastern and Western Han dynasties, were all like this. Before they ascended the throne and gained power, they were all extremely virtuous. But after gaining power, they became unimaginably tyrannical. When other children were playing, I also wanted to play. But I couldn't. Once I slacked off, my grandfather would order people to beat me and scold me. He was strict with me, 100 times more than he was with the other brothers, or even more. Li Yuren's soft voice was like a whisper. When I was young, he told me that you were different from others. When you grow up, you will do great things. And I always remembered it in my heart. After countless times of beating and scolding, I finally completely accepted my own identity, an identity that was high and mighty. Li Yuren's expression was calm, as if she was talking about other people's matters. I could never speak loudly. I always had to be gentle and elegant. Even if I was angry to death, I still had a smile on my face. I had to smile sincerely and calmly. Even if my body was in excruciating pain, I still had to look indifferent, calm, and even happy. Because my grandfather told me that perseverance is the most basic quality to achieve great things. At that time, the day my mother came to visit me every month could be said to be the happiest day of my life. Because on that day, although I still couldn't fall behind in my homework, all the martial artists and teachers who were supervising me would leave. My mother would accompany me to practice martial arts, swordsmanship, zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She would also cook for me. Then, she would stand quietly at the side and watch me practice martial arts. I also looked forward to that day every month. Usually, I didn't dare to relax because I realized that when I made great progress, my mother's face would show surprise. She would be very happy. When she was happy, I was very happy. I wanted her to be happy every month. Li Yuren's eyes were closed tightly, and the corners of his eyes were a little wet. His face showed a tender expression, but his back was facing Jun Moxie, so Jun Moxie couldn't see it. Chapter 539. Almost everyone says that I'm a genius. I learn everything very quickly, but they don't know why I'm so fast. I'm only a few years old. What does a child really know? They don't know that I'm only meeting my mother every month. I want her to smile a little more. I want her to be happy. However, this kind of dull but hopeful life only lasted until I was 10 years old. At that time, my grandfather had gradually begun to train me to be exposed to blood and politics. He would often ask for my opinion on certain matters. If my opinion was slightly inappropriate, he would reprimand me severely. One day, I went hunting with my guards, and I met a person. That person was my master. I shot an antelope with an arrow, but I didn't kill it. So, I rode my horse and killed it with my sword. I tried hard to control my emotions. Then, a voice suddenly said, "You're cold-blooded. You're a good seedling." Then, a man appeared in front of me. He looked at me and didn't speak any nonsense. He grabbed me and touched all the joints of my body. Then, he said, "Very good." Then, he asked me if I wanted to worship him as my master. The bodyguards came to rescue me, but that man was squatting down and talking to me. Then, he waved his hand, and the bodyguards fell to the ground. Then, he came to my house and said that he wanted to accept me as his disciple. Li Yuren smiled bitterly and said, "I knew that he was the cold-blooded master, Lei Wu Bei. He was the world's top peerless master." My grandfather agreed to accept me as his disciple after he found out about his identity. But I didn't agree. I knew that I would never see my mother again if I went with him. But I still went with him in the end. The first time I went home from my master's place was 2 years later. I was very happy. In fact, I was ecstatic. I was finally able to see my mother again after 2 years. I didn't rest or sleep while I was on horseback. It took me only 10 days to get home. I learned a lot from my master, and I made rapid progress. I wanted to tell my mother this good news as soon as possible. I wanted her to share the joy of my success. I didn't want to waste even a moment. I just wanted to hold her, or let her hold me. I love that feeling, but I didn't see my mother when I got home. I looked for her everywhere, but no one told me anything. Even my mother's maid was missing. I couldn't do anything about it. I only remember that I felt very bad at that time. It was the first time in my life that I had tortured someone. I caught the Leaf family's housekeeper at night and asked him about my mother's whereabouts. He refused to tell me at first. So I pulled out 10 of his fingernails and 10 of his toenails. Finally, he told me that my mother was dead. Li Yuren's tall figure trembled in the wind. 2 drops of tears slowly seeped out of the corners of her eyes. Jun Moxie sat quietly and listened. He suddenly felt a sense of pity for this former rival of his. My mother missed me very much after I left home. After I left home, my mother missed me very much. In fact, she would dream of me almost every day. My mother would cry and beg to see me every day. My father, Li Yuren's face contorted for the first time. My father was annoyed and deliberately avoided her. But my mother would always find a way to look for him. After crying for a while, they finally had a big fight one day. That damn bastard. Over such a small matter, he actually injured her. Her injuries were not light at all, and she passed away a few days later. When I came home, it was less than 2 months after my mother's death. At that time, the Minister of Revenue of the Empire was not Tang Yuan's father, but my father. He was good at both literature and martial arts. My mother was just a weak woman who didn't know martial arts. But he was so cruel to her. Li Yuren clenched her teeth. Jun Moxie clearly heard a cracking sound. Li Yuren said in a hoarse voice, "Third young master, if you were me, what would you do? If I were you, what would I do?" Jun Moxie thought seriously. After a while, he shook his head with a bitter smile. On one side, it was his birth mother. On the other side, it was his birth father. What could he do? He thought quietly for a while, but he had no clue. He couldn't help but ask, "Then what did you do?" "Third young master, it seems that you're no match for me in this aspect." Li Yuren smiled bitterly. Everyone says that the Jun family's third young master is a bloodthirsty man. But I say that you're no match for me. I'm inhumane. He smiled cruelly. His lips trembled as he spoke through his teeth. I killed him." Jun Moxie was shocked. Li Yuren was only a 12-year-old child at that time. But she had killed her own father. This was simply inconceivable. Ha ha ha. Li Yuren smiled bitterly. Is it that surprising? The first person I killed in my life was my father. Li Yuren's body trembled. It seemed as if she was having a spasm. It took a long time for her to regain her composure. Then, her voice became even more ruthless and indifferent. I changed from that day onwards. I changed completely. I became ruthless. My parents were dead. There was no one else in this world who was worthy of my care. I even killed my own father. So, what else could I not dare to kill? What else could I not kill? You're so ruthless. Jun Moxie felt ashamed of his inferiority. This wasn't just ruthless, it was inhumane. Jun Moxie felt that he wouldn't have gone to such extremes if he had been in her shoes. The mountains are deep and the seas are deep. The heavens are high and the earth is deep. My parents created me and raised me. So, I can't kill them with my own hands, even if I'm wrong, right? No wonder I felt that Li Yuren's character had always been so twisted. She was so cold and vicious that it was scary. This incident must have had an incomparable impact on her. Afterwards, I took that blood-stained knife and went to my grandfather. I told him that I'd killed your son, because he had killed my mother. Li Yuren continued to narrate. Then my grandfather stayed in a daze for a long time. Then he issued his first order: kill everyone who knew about this incident. Then he announced to the public that my father had died of an incurable disease. I killed my father, and nearly 1,000 people were buried with him. It was then that I realized that everything I did no longer only involved myself, nor was it targeted at a single person. Instead, it was everything. Li Yuran smiled bitterly. Then, my grandfather gave me a good beating after dealing with these matters. Then he said to me, no matter what I did, I shouldn't regret it. Jun Moxie sighed in his heart. This Li Yuran is extreme and vicious. But the way that Grand Preceptor Li Shang taught his grandson is also superb. This is really a superb family. It's normal for a wife to miss her son. But the husband didn't know how to comfort his wife or take good care of her. Instead, he beat his wife until she was seriously injured and even died. Then, the son came back and killed his father to avenge his mother. When the grandfather knew that his son was killed by his grandson, he actually told his grandson, don't regret it. The Li family is born cold-blooded. For example, Li Yuran's father beat his wife until she was seriously injured because of the dispute between husband and wife. And Li Yuran went one step further and killed her own father with her own hands. This is really King Bastard. People's hearts are made of flesh. At that time, my grandfather didn't sleep for several nights. His hair turned white. A few days later, he told me that my character is suitable for doing great things. If I want to succeed, I must be heartless and heartless. Li Yuran smiled bitterly and self-mockingly. Jun Moxie was completely speechless. No wonder Li Yuran can be so sinister and vicious. With such a father and grandfather, it would be a fantasy if he still taught a kind and virtuous grandson. Then, I went back to the mountain and only came down 3 years ago. During these years, the Li family paid for all the food and clothing on the mountain. Even the weddings, and funerals. Master treated me better and better. My fellow apprentices all felt that they owed my family. Li Yuran looked confused, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy at all. When I returned home, my grandfather officially appointed me as the future head of the family. Then, he handed over all the family businesses in the mansion and outside to me. I was completely busy, but whenever I saw the people of the Li family, I would think of my father, that beast, that bastard. So I hated him. Then I got the power in my hands. So I started cleaning up the family. Every time I saw them suffer in front of me, and they didn't dare to say anything in front of me, I felt very happy. So I suddenly understood that this was where my happiness came from. Li Yuran sneered. That's why I like to see others in pain. I like to see others being punished by me. The more painful they are, the happier I am. I especially like those days when I can make them cry with one sentence and make them laugh with another. It gives me a refreshing feeling of being able to turn my hand and summon clouds and rain with one turn of my hand. At first, I only targeted the Li family, but I slowly realized that other people could also make me feel this way. And what was even more unexpected was that after I punished those people, the Li family gradually became more prosperous. Whether it was the business or the official circle, the Li family became more and more strict. This was really beyond my expectation. You punished so many vermin in the family, so naturally, the family became more prosperous. Moreover, you even dared to attack your own brothers and uncles. Who would dare to play tricks on the servants? It would be strange if the Li family didn't rise under such an iron fist. Jun Moxie thought to himself. He finally understood. So this was the case. The main reason was that Li Yuran had killed her own father. She had completely aroused the devil in her heart. So, she had walked step by step to where she was now. Everything was because of this. Chapter 540. But all of this must be done with power. The more power one has, the more pleasure one can get. A cold light flashed in Li Yuran's eyes. So, I began to use all my enthusiasm to study tactics, to figure out how to get more power. Slowly, the whole family was under my control. But at that time, I found that I was no longer satisfied with a mere family. I wanted more power. So, I began to curry favor and suppress all my opponents. Slowly, I suddenly felt that one of my grandfather's words was the truth, Li Yuran said. That sentence. June Moxie asked curiously. If you want to succeed, you must be ruthless. Ruthless? Li Yuren's eyes flashed. It was the sentence my grandfather said after I killed my father. Therefore, no matter what I do, I will deliberately stay out of it. I will use the perspective of a bystander to do things, and I will see things more accurately. No matter who it is, as long as they hinder my plans, I will eliminate them without exception. Even if they're my closest relatives, I can give them up if the benefits are big enough. Li Yuran said gloomily, because sometimes if I care about my own feelings, I may not be able to achieve my goal. If I can't achieve my goal, I may fail. If I fail, it will be easy for me to lose everything. So, I can't have feelings. If I can't have feelings, I can only be ruthless. All things in the world, all living things in the world, are just my tools. Li Yuran sneered. If I'm at the top, I can have whatever I want. Even if I lost it before, I can easily get it back. Even if it doesn't belong to me, as long as I want it, I can get it. In the whole world, there is only me. His Majesty the Emperor was an excellent example. Murong Xiuxiu and Yi Guhan were a match made in heaven. Their families were well matched in terms of social status. They were a talented man and a beautiful woman. They were childhood sweethearts and had deep feelings for each other. But His Majesty wanted Murong Xiuxiu. So Yi Guhan's family became traitors overnight. Murong Xiuxiu entered the palace not long after and became the empress. This matter inspired me greatly. Li Yuran clenched her fist. This incident only pushed you further down the path of becoming a demon. She doesn't love you. So what can you do even if you get her? June Mo, Xie didn't agree with this. Even if she doesn't love me, I'd rather let her frown and cry under me than let her moan happily under someone else. I may not be able to obtain her heart, but I will be able to obtain her body. This is much more profitable than those who can't even obtain her body. Moreover, I believe that as long as I work hard, even if her heart doesn't belong to me, it will completely belong to me in the future. Li Yuran coldly snorted as he spoke in a vicious manner. You're a pervert. June Moxie frowned. Li Yuran, you're finished. There's no turning back. Why should I turn back? What can I get if I turn back? Even if there's no turning back, there's still a long way in front of me. Li Yuran smiled sarcastically. Suddenly, as if she had lost all her strength, her shoulders slumped. He had been silent for more than 10 years and had never told anyone about it. Now that he had poured it all out, he actually felt weak all over and his heart was empty. He couldn't tell whether he was sad or happy. In fact, he didn't even feel the slightest bit relaxed. He only felt that in this short moment, he had walked through the past once again. She still felt depressed in her heart, but because she had an audience, she didn't feel so lonely anymore. June Sunshao, thank you for listening to me. Apart from you, I can't think of anyone else I can talk to. After a long time, Li Yuran finally turned around. He slowly walked to the stone table and sat down. He then said in a serious tone, "This feeling right now is pretty good." There was a warm smile on Li Yuran's jade-like face. It was sincere and warm. She had regained her previous elegance and elegance. You're welcome. You made me understand a lot of things. I didn't believe it before, but today I believe it. Jun Mo Xie's eyes became clear as he looked at Li Yuran. He looked at this man who was stuck in the pit of evil and couldn't extricate himself from it. Li Yuran was handsome, but he didn't feel that his demeanor was elegant. Instead, he felt pity for him. This person is a pitiful person, right? As for you, June Moxie, I've never paid attention to you before. In my eyes, I'm a swan flying high in the sky. And you're just a loach in the mud. I'm handsome, but you're useless. Li Yuran laughed. That's why I've never paid attention to you. But this year, you miraculously emerged as a new force. You've been soaring all the way. In just half a year, you've already surpassed me before I could react. When I first found out that you've made a name for yourself, I used to regard you as my rival. I even thought that you've endured for so many years. Now that you've risen, I think that you're similar to me in terms of character and inner qualities. But now I don't think so anymore. Li Yuran's smile was a little bitter, because now I'm not qualified to be your rival. A swan is beautiful, but compared to a rock that soars to the nine heavens, it's insignificant. That's why we're having a long talk today. June Moxie smiled, but didn't say anything. That was because this was already a publicly acknowledged fact. Third young master, do you know why I'm having a chat with you? Li Yuran laughed and looked at June Moxie with interest. Hee, I think that even though young Master Li is depressed, you shouldn't tell me these secrets. Tell me your true intentions. June Moxie raised his eyebrows. In the past few days, I've been faced with a new choice. It's a choice that might affect the future of my life. I can't make up my mind, so I'm here to ask for your opinion. Li Yuran spoke very seriously, even a little solemn. Faced with a choice? You're here to ask for my opinion? June Moxie was stunned. Li Yuran, young Master Li, have you taken the wrong medicine? Yes. I must ask for your opinion. Li Yuran's eyes suddenly became deep and profound. That's because you will play a vital role in it. Tell me about it. It's actually this kind of involvement. It's also a coincidence that my master recommended me to the great golden city. Ma Jiangming went to the Li family to see me 10 days ago because of this matter. He felt very satisfied after observing me for a while. As long as I agree, I'll be the successor of the great golden city. In other words, I'll have the opportunity to witness the war for seizing the heavens in a few years. Moreover, I'll have the opportunity to participate in the next war for seizing the heavens. In fact, I might even become the decision-maker. Li Yuran's expression became serious. This time, the great golden city will choose a dozen youths as candidates. June Moxie, you're probably the one who understands me the most. As long as I go, no other youth can be my opponent. I'm convinced of this point. June Moxie said sincerely. If Li Yuran's intelligence and vicious nature can't win, then the people of this world are too monstrous. At the same time, his heart skipped a beat. So, Li Yuran is facing such a choice. No wonder he's being so open and honest today. No wonder he's being so blunt today. He's completely different from before. June Moxie faintly understood the real purpose of Li Yuran's visit. But if I go, I'll have to give up the fruits of my hard work all these years. I'll have to transfer my worldly power to another level of peak power. But I've already put in so many years of hard work. I'm not that far from the goal in my heart. I'm really reluctant to give it up. But I'll have to start all over again if I agree, Li Yuran said slowly. It seemed as if he was thinking about what to say. June Moxie didn't speak. Instead, he quietly waited for her to get to the point. Li Yuran remained silent for a long time. Then, she suddenly raised her head and looked straight at June Moxie. She then spoke in a low voice. June Moxie, will you oppose me if I become the emperor of the Tianxiang Empire? Or will you oppose me? I know that you don't have any desire for power. You don't care about this. You only care about your family. You only care about your feelings. You only care about the people you care about. Moreover, you only care about absolute strength and absolute freedom. I'm confident that I've never misjudged you. It doesn't matter who becomes the emperor. You won't care too much as long as it doesn't endanger you. And I can swear to the heavens that I won't make an enemy of the June family, regardless of whether I succeed or not. In fact, I won't dare to make an enemy of the June family. Li Yuran's eyes started to burn with passion. She fixed her gaze on June Moxie. This has been my biggest dream for the first half of my life. I was confident that I would succeed. But you've appeared now. I have a premonition that I'll receive a terrible blow from you if I act rashly. And I can't afford such a blow considering the June family's current strength. Third young master, you're well aware of how the current emperor treats the June family. And I'm also aware of some things. Moreover, the emperor's 3 sons aren't on good terms with you and Tang Yuan. So, I believe that you don't want them to become the emperor of Tianxiang. Therefore, I'll give up on the great golden city if you don't interfere. And I'll go all out against Tianxiang. Chapter 541. Fourth update. June Moxie had been quietly listening and hadn't spoken a word. His brows were tightly knitted, and it seemed as if he was deep in thought. Li Yuran had been agitated for a while. She took 2 deep breaths and then calmed down. She then took a deep breath and said, "This is my choice. A real man can't be powerless for even a day. If third young master agrees, then I, Li Yuran, will have nothing to fear." June Moxie smiled deeply. "Don't tell me that I have such a big influence now." "Yes. In fact, I don't even know if I have an even more terrifying influence. The current situation in Tianxiang is very clear. As long as you, June Moxie, want this country to perish, then the Tianxiang Empire's destruction will happen overnight. In fact, it would only take a single thought to slaughter the entire imperial family in one night. But you're still worried about Senior June's feelings. Moreover, you don't have any conclusive evidence. So, you don't dare to act blindly without thinking." Li Yuran gritted her teeth and said, "If third young master still can't decide on a side, then I'll have no choice but to go to the Great Golden City. I'll have the opportunity to become enemies with third young master if I don't have a promise from third young master. So, I'll have no choice but to choose the direction of self-preservation." Li Yuran smiled gently and calmly stated her 2 choices. June Moxie suddenly stood up and paced 2 steps with his hands behind his back. His brows were tightly knitted. Li Yuran had already spoken her mind today, and June Moxie absolutely believed that what Li Yuran had said today was from the bottom of her heart. But June Moxie couldn't let go even though he believed it. With Li Yuran's character, even if she was speaking the truth at the moment. But if there was a conflict of interest with him in the future, then it was to be expected that he would fall out with her mercilessly. And that's because Li Yuran was such a person. Therefore, June Moxie didn't believe Li Yuran's promise at all. Moreover, Li Yuran's ambition was great, and his ability was indeed good. Moreover, his scheming methods were even better. But June Moxie didn't believe that he would be a good candidate to manage the country. At this moment, Li Yuran was the prototype of a powerful minister, and also the best candidate for a powerful minister. However, he was not necessarily suitable to be the monarch of a country. "Or maybe you think too highly of me." June Moxie furrowed his brows and said, "Li Yuran, you have spoken frankly enough today, so I will not hide anything from you. You are really not suitable to be a monarch. You should be below 1 person and above tens of thousands. That is your best position. But if you want to rule the world, you're still lacking a lot." "Third young master, you mean you don't approve of my suggestion?" Li Yuran was a little disappointed. She didn't wait for June Moxie to answer, and suddenly laughed. "No wonder you made the decision to let Yang Mo enter the aristocratic hall. No wonder you let Yang Mo be in charge of dealing with the most difficult members of the royal family. It turns out that you have been tempering him all along." Li Yuran's smile was very cold. In fact, it seemed that she was very disappointed and desperate. "I believe that you won't dare to touch him." June Moxie and Ling Ling smiled as they avoided this topic. Li Yuran was such a person that he would think of ways to trip him up if he admitted it. But he would become suspicious if he didn't admit it. So, it would be better for him to be suspicious and indecisive if he didn't admit it. Moreover, June Moxie's words could be said to be a blatant threat. "Yes, I won't dare to touch him now. In fact, I won't even dare to touch him in the Tianxiang city." Li Yuran laughed heartily. "In that case, I choose to go to the Great Golden City, but I will come back when my strength has reached the point where I dare to move. Perhaps everything will have changed by then. You know too little about the high-level world of Xian experts. The world doesn't only consist of power and influence." June Moxie said thoughtfully, "Perhaps I will become your enemy when I go to the Great Golden City." Li Yuran raised her head and looked at June Moxie. "Because of your relationship with Tian Fa, I have understood some things during this period of time." "No, you won't. You definitely won't." June Moxie sneered. "Because you are very smart. Perhaps you would have done something before I rose to power. But you won't dare to do it now. As long as I, June Moxie, am not dead, you won't dare to make an enemy of me. But if I die, the first person to hit the June family when they are down will most likely be you. Third young master knows me too well. Li Yuran smiled confidently. Although I am smart and shrewd, I still have this problem of being overcautious. That's why you are not suitable to be the emperor. Jun Moxie said coldly. I won't give up. I definitely won't give up. Man can conquer nature. Li Yuran stood up. Jun Moxie, I have to go. I will go to the great golden city in 3 days. Perhaps we will meet again in the indefinite future. Just as you said, you have never liked me. In fact, I am the same. I have always treated you as an opponent. I have never thought of becoming friends with you. In fact, I have never thought that one day we would be able to have such a peaceful conversation. But before I leave, I will give you some words. What words? Jun Moxie raised his eyebrows in interest. You must be careful these next few days. You must be very careful. Li Yuran laughed out loud and said, Consider it a small reward from me. Although you didn't agree to any of my requests, and you didn't give me the promise I wanted, but you listened to me. Moreover, I don't want you to die in the hands of others. I have always thought that if I can kill Jun Moxie with my own hands, it would be a very happy thing for me. I believe that this wish of yours won't come true in this lifetime. Jun Moxie's eyes flashed as he stood up. I have been a hypocrite for half my life, but you, Jun Moxie, will be a real villain for the rest of your life. In fact, both of us will feel lonely if one of us is missing. This wish of mine doesn't come true. Although we are not destined to be friends in this lifetime, but you will always be my motivation. Li Yuran laughed. Suddenly, his face changed. Third young master, goodbye. He cupped his hands, turned his head, and left without looking back. He hadn't achieved any of his goals today. His request to Jun Moxie had also been met with tragic setbacks. But he had immediately let go of them. He didn't seem the least bit dissatisfied or angry. In fact, he had even reminded Jun Moxie before he left. Jun Moxie slowly sat down. Li Yuran's words were very interesting. From his words, it could be heard that the people from the 3 holy lands had already arrived. Moreover, they were about to take action against the Jun family. Li Yuran's gift could be said to be not light. It was not light at all. Although you look down on the Li family from the bottom of your heart, it doesn't mean that you don't have any worries. Although you advocate ruthlessness and heartlessness, you still have feelings. People are always people. How can they be heartless? Jun Moxie whispered as he watched Li Yuran's figure disappear around the corner. Li Yuran had given such a big gift before he left for the great golden city. It wasn't because he liked Jun Moxie. It wasn't because he wanted to repay Jun Moxie for listening to him today. It was because he didn't think that the Tianxiang imperial family would succeed. As long as Jun Moxie made his move, the Tianxiang imperial family would change overnight. Therefore, Li Yuran had done a big favor for the Li family. It was tantamount to a life-saving talisman for the Li family. There was only one meaning to it. I hope that you will be lenient towards the Li family when that time comes. At least, don't bring disaster to the fish in the pond. Li Yuran was a very smart person. He was worthy of the title of the #1 scholar in Tianxiang. He had accurately guessed Jun Moxie's thoughts, but he had resolutely chosen to keep it a secret for Jun Moxie. He hadn't made any requests, threats, or conditions in exchange. That was because he clearly knew that he couldn't afford to provoke Jun Moxie. Even if he did, he wouldn't get anything in return. So, he might as well sell it. Jun Moxie shook his head and sighed. If Li Yuran had dared to offend him or say anything rude, then he would have been dead. Jun Moxie wouldn't have minded killing him on the spot. However, Li Yuran was very smart. He didn't give him any reason to attack. Or perhaps Jun Dashao appreciated him a little. After all, did the evil monarch need a reason to kill someone? A gust of wind blew in the sky. Snowflakes fluttered down and fell on his face and hands. The coldness seeped into his heart. Chapter 542. That night, Lei Wu Bei, Shichang Xiao, and the others didn't leave. They stayed at the Jun residence. Since the guests didn't want to leave, the host naturally couldn't send them away, especially since they were the great masters. Grandpa Jun and the others felt a little strange. It was already unexpected that the two great masters would come, but it was even more strange that they would stay here. On the other hand, Phone 1 Yun stayed with Solitary Falcon. The sound of the wind started to die down in the afternoon. Then it slowly disappeared. The world was quiet. Only the silver snowflakes, with a dreamy color, were falling slowly. The ground, the trees, and the roofs were all covered with a thick layer of snow. The land was covered in white and hazy. In the middle of the night, amidst the silence, more than 100 silhouettes quietly surrounded the June family's courtyard in the heavy snow. Everyone's movements were light and agile, as if they were riding the wind. In an instant, there were dozens of people standing on the walls of the June residence. These people were very skilled. Even the guards of the June residence were walking back and forth under the walls. But they didn't notice that there were people standing on top of their heads. From afar, 7 or 8 figures fluttered over in the air. Their movements seemed to be even more agile than the fluttering snowflakes in the sky, and even more leisurely and carefree. In the elegant fragrance courtyard, Mei Shuyan was lying on the bed. She frowned and suddenly sat up. Her body flashed, and she put on her clothes. She flicked her finger, and a small piece of paper flew out of the window. It unexpectedly made a turn in the air and went into the room of the Qian Sun Serpent Queen. Then, Mei Shuyan's body moved slightly, and she was already in front of the window. She looked out and saw that there were countless people in black in the sky above the June residence. They were slowly falling along with the snowflakes. Mei Shuyan's eyes flashed with a murderous look. Her face was as cold as ice. Suddenly, she opened the door and floated out silently. In a flash, her slim body was like a fairy in the sky. She rose more than 100 feet and stood firmly on the top of the June residence's tower. Lang shouted, "How could the 3 holy lands be so despicable? They even did such a despicable thing as sneak attacking the people of the secular world. How despicable!" At the same time, Mei Shuyan's frightening aura surged out in all directions. In less than a breath's time, the entire June family's courtyard was completely enveloped by her aura. It was as if a dried-up lake had been filled to the brim by a raging torrent. There was no sign of stopping. Hundreds of rivers converged, and the aura was majestic. It was accompanied by countless bolts of lightning that ruthlessly wreaked havoc in the entire space. On the top of the tower, Mei Shuyan's clothes were whiter than snow. Her long hair cascaded down like a waterfall. Her slim and graceful figure stood proudly. Her exquisite face was exuding a chilling coldness. Her aura rolled up the first heavy snow of the winter. The fluttering cotton floated around her slowly. At this moment, Mei Shuyan looked like a celestial being. However, this celestial being had an earth-shattering murderous aura. Mei Shuyan was truly angry at this moment. Facing the despicable actions of the 3 holy lands, she had always been graceful and elegant. She had always looked at the bigger picture, but this time, she finally revealed her murderous aura for the first time. It was really murderous. It was an awe-inspiring, murderous aura. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A series of sounds of clothes fluttering could be heard. Mei Shuyan secretly counted. There were a total of 90 figures rushing over from all directions and gathering at the foot of the tower. They had gathered here because they had no other choice. These people were all top-notch experts. The leader was even more experienced. He quickly judged that in this kind of situation, if they were to forcefully disperse their strength, those who were relatively weaker would not be able to withstand a fatal blow from the beautiful lady at the top of the tower. They could be defeated and killed at any time. The experts on their side might not even be able to save them in time. Under the pressure of Mei Shuyan's abnormally powerful aura, the 90 top experts from the 3 holy lands had no choice but to change their initial plans. They gathered together. If they gave Mei Shuyan the chance to defeat them one by one, the current Mei Shuyan would definitely not be polite. Just the powerful aura of one person was enough to make 90 top experts tremble in fear. Mei Shuyan's strength could really be said to be earth-shattering. At the same time, countless powerful auras surged into the sky. The dense snow was actually pushed away in an instant. It was as if an invisible dome was propped up above the June family's courtyard, blocking all the snowflakes outside. The aura surged back, and Mei Shuiyan's clothes fluttered in the wind. The three holy lands are not up to you to make thoughtless remarks. We are all doing this for the peace of the world and for the common people. What do you know? A strange, ear-piercing voice rang out. This disgusting voice sounded like a mouse grinding its teeth in the dark. It also sounded like the shrill cry of an owl on a grave. It also sounded like the gates of hell had been opened, and evil spirits rushed out. In short, it was as ugly as it could be. As this voice rang out, a person floated out of the crowd in a trance. Yes, he floated out because his feet didn't move at all, and his body didn't move in the slightest. He just floated out just like that, like a ghost. Under the reflection of the quiet, snowy light, this person's hair was disheveled, his face was haggard, and his cheeks were sunken. One of his eyes was emitting a cold light in its socket, and the other eye was actually just a hole, a black hole. As he floated in a trance, one could see that his left sleeve was fluttering behind. It was obvious that he did not have an arm inside. One of his trousers was also empty, and one of his legs was missing. If one looked closely at his head, one could also see that this person only had one ear left. He stood there like a zombie that had just jumped out of the grave, ghastly and eerie. This person was seriously disabled. Mei Shuiyan's expression changed. She knew this person, and the reason why she knew him was because he was the one who had led the ambush that year. This person's surname was Yu. His original name was Yu Dushing. He had a good personality. However, he had been disabled after he had been defeated. Only half of his body had been left. Therefore, he had gained the nickname of half-bodied. However, he didn't care about it. Half-bodied's name had spread far and wide over time, and no one had called him Yu Dushing anymore. This name was somewhat comical. However, this person wasn't comical at all. He had a habit of splitting half whenever he saw someone. However, this splitting half didn't refer to his property. Instead, it referred to his body. He would split half whenever he saw half-bodied. This person was disabled, but he was extremely strong. Moreover, his status was even higher. He was the chief steward of the hermitage. He was known as a cold-faced, iron-hearted, and ruthless person. Moreover, his Xian cultivation was also quite outstanding. In fact, he had rarely met a worthy opponent in his life. In fact, he had besieged Mei Shuiyan last time, and Mei Shuiyan wouldn't have received such serious internal and external injuries if this person hadn't gone all out to contain her. This time, it was quite a coincidence that he had led the team here. It seemed that enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. He raised his head in a gloomy manner. A cold ray of light flickered in his single eye as he looked at Mei Shuiyan. He then frowned. Then, he suddenly let out a strange laugh and said, "Little girl, don't be too arrogant. Don't stand too high. Otherwise, the wind will cut your tongue." Mei Shuiyan looked down at him from above. Then, she looked at him with Lang Lang and said in a deep voice, "Get out." She had only said 3 words. However, these 3 words had suddenly exploded like 3 muffled claps of thunder. In fact, even the ground trembled a few times. In fact, the accumulated snow on the trees within a radius of several hundred feet fell down with a rustling sound. The 90 people in the courtyard were left in shock. They had known that the June family had a peerless expert. However, they hadn't anticipated that they would reach such a high level. Just based on the achievements of this Xian cultivation, not a single one of the 90 peak experts from the 3 holy lands could compare to him. However, they weren't afraid. After all, even the weakest among the people who had come here had reached the great master level. Moreover, there were 30 great master level experts among them. Each of the 3 holy lands had sent 10 of these experts. So, this was the most powerful cooperation that the 3 holy lands had seen in the last several hundred years. 60 great master level experts and 30 great master level experts were present. So, it would be a big joke if they were to be frightened by someone else's words. This woman's Xian cultivation is astonishing. But even a fierce tiger can't stand up to a pack of wolves. Wasn't the big brother of the Tion Fa, the venerable May, strong? Wasn't he overbearing? Wasn't he defeated by the 10 great master-level experts? He had been forced to flee in a sorry state. So, what reason does he have to be afraid of a young woman? Little girl, you won't be able to convince us to leave just by standing there and talking nonsense. Then, you might as well come down and see if you have the ability. After all, people will only listen to your words if you have a big fist, half-bodied, narrowed his lone eye as he spoke up in a sinister manner. There was another person beside him. He looked refined and sharp. He had a dignified demeanor. It was Ning Wuching. There was another person who also had the air of an immortal. His bones were clear and exquisite. His face was thin and his hair was white. He looked as calm as a mountain. Another 7 people lined up behind him. Then there were another 20 people lined up in 2 rows. This was the entire lineup of the hermitage. Mei Shuyan looked down from above. She looked at their battle formation with cold eyes. She sighed in her heart. Their battle formation was very mysterious. It could be said that they could attack or retreat at will. In fact, only a group of battle-hardened experts could spontaneously form such a battle formation in a split second. It could be seen from this that the tacit understanding between these people had reached a very high level. And this tacit understanding had been rehearsed for the upcoming war for seizing the heavens. However, this tacit understanding should have been used to deal with the outsiders. But it had been used against their own people today. This was perhaps an indescribable sorrow. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.